guys, I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome back to this week's No Limits, a Mitch Rapp Podcast. How are you doing this week, Mike?
I'm great, Chris. I was so good. I was thinking about picking up some Maker's Mark for this little chat because our boy Stan Hurley, he's pounding a couple of those throughout American Assassin.
He likes it so much that he doesn't want to spill the bourbon. Like he really wants to throw the glass, but he doesn't want to spill that bourbon.
That's right. He would throw a lot of glasses if those glasses didn't have the bourbon in it.
I am extra hyped this week, Mike. I am so excited to talk about this book. It's finally here, American Assassin. You just mentioned this to me before we started recording, but another thing, we need to enter into the Vince Flynn Memorial Museum, a pickle pizza.
That's right, pickle pizza. Yeah, I saw that a few times on social media. The Flynn pizza from that restaurant that still makes the pizza Flynn would order. We gotta
get this museum going. We
can get a brochure from the restaurant with, signed by the owner, highlighting the Vince.
With
I think they call it the Vince.
With like a fake pizza in front of it.
It's got the pickles. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. We can dehydrate a pizza and preserve it. You're a scientist. Some scientific method of preserving a real pizza in the museum.
Yeah, I'll get right on that.
Good stuff. You know what else is good stuff? The book we're covering today. Chris, tell us, what are we getting into on this pod?
All right, the time is finally here. It's June, right? I think it's June. I don't know. I've lost all perception of time.
We are 5 days into June as of recording.
Yes, it is June, and we are doing American Assassin. So roughly from the beginning of the book to almost midway, and really, kicking it off by starting to talk about Mitch's origin. This is his origin story. We're gonna really go deep into the scenes at Lake Anna, at the farm. Yeah, really excited to talk to you about this today.
Let's do it.
All right, so I'm the theme guy apparently,
right?
And one of the interesting things that really jumped out to me from the first half of the book was this line that Mitch had, and of course I'm not you, so I don't have the exact quote, but he's talking to Hurley, or I think he's talking to Hurley, or
he's talking to Lewis.
Dr. Lewis.
This
Lewis,
is
that's what it is.
Interrogation with Doc Lewis.
Yes, and Dr. Lewis asks him, why are you here? Is it revenge? And Mitch says, no, not revenge, retribution. Which, those two words are pretty kind of equal, but they have a different spin. So my theme for this episode is retribution, not revenge.
And Doc Lewis, being the psychologist that he is, asked Rapp to define those terms, to really tease out what he means. And I think Rapp gives a really leveled response of revenge is not calculated. It's
raw,
it happens.
Visceral.
It's raw. And the thing he gives is, I would feel bad, or I think you're crazy if you stay up all night thinking about killing a man because he stole $20 from you. Or, he broke into your car and took some CDs or whatever. Remember, this is the early 2000s.
Right.
Well, actually, 1989 is the setting.
This book does a really good job of setting you in that time frame, which is kind of cool.
So they take your cassettes or your 8 tracks. But anyway, he says you'd be crazy if you want revenge on that guy and you stay up thinking about him. But someone who deserves retribution, it's morally justified if you go after them and they deserve to die. And Rapp defines that as someone who is a terrorist and takes innocent lives. And so a little difference there between retribution and revenge. One he feels is morally justified, and the other one is just kind of a reaction based on emotion. And the doc kind of goes back and tells Kennedy and Stansfield, I think this guy meets your profile.
Right.
Yeah. And meets the profile of what they called the third objective. I like that conversation, Kennedy and Hurley. And Kennedy's like, Stan, you're recruiting all these military guys. Sure, they can kick ass, but they're going to stand out like a sore thumb if they try to go undercover in the Middle East or anywhere for being, brutes. And the third objective is get a really pinpointed tip of the spear, deep undercover operative who can get in places and just be an assassin. They want a psychological profile, while Hurley really wants more of a physical profile. And that's why the team of Doc Lewis, Kennedy, Hurley, and Stansfield all working together is really going to shape Rapp into who he is.
Yep.
You're right about quotes, though, because I got quite a few today for you.
Yes, you do.
You know, I quote a lot and highlight as I'm reading.
It's a sign of a good book.
Well, yeah, sometimes it means I'm bored and I'm just like, this book is not really doing it for me, so I gotta like dig for things and find them. But sometimes I'm just highlighting at will because I'm loving it. Every line is just crushing it for me. And that was me on American Assassin, just highlighting everything because the writing was so awesome, so over the top. And it started with the dedication. We get a nice dedication here, which is something very familiar to most of us Rapp fans.
Yes. And it goes, to the victims of Pan Am Lockerbie terrorist attack and their families.
It's fitting. That's who deserves this book.
Yeah, and to me, we've gotten that little one paragraph or 2-page description of this attack, right? From the very beginning. I even think that we see this in Transfer of Power, right?
I think so, yeah.
Where we get maybe a couple pages, a couple paragraphs, discussing his backstory. And you can see that Vince obviously had this idea from the very beginning, wanted to pay tribute to, not pay tribute to this attack, but pay tribute to the victims of this attack. Victims. And decides to craft Mitch's drive from the very beginning, out of this attack, right? These terrorists take his loved one, his high school sweetheart away from him, and that drives him. And obviously he's, and there's another conversation where it's like, I miss my father. Like I miss her. It's not just missing the people who I've lost. It's like they took away something that he can never get back. And for Vince to dedicate this to them is saying a lot. And what also is interesting about this, right, is that Kyle, who ends up taking over for Vince, his dad was one of the first Americans on scene to investigate this. Like it's a crazy how small world everything is, Right. And that's the titular event that sets Mitch off into who he becomes, right?
You know what's interesting though, and this is kind of meta. I was thinking about it when I was reading. Most of us assumed going into this book, we knew about the Lockerbie attack and we knew that was Rapp's motivation. But it's barely mentioned until I think it's about chapter 20 where Vince gives that full story. And so he's even thinking of new readers, maybe years later, who this is going to be their first Rapp book, and he's not spilling the beans to them right away. Right. There's a line, I think, in chapter 1. There's a line in chapter 1 that says, he lost someone very dear to him. I don't even think it says his high school sweetheart and all this. And then in chapter 14, Doc Lewis says, do you miss her? And it sets Rapp off. And then it's not until I think 20 or so where Vince gives the whole backstory of who Maureen was. And for some reason, my Kindle version said Mary. Did yours call her Mary?
George Guidell said Mary too.
It maybe was just a nickname, but all the other books, I feel like it was always Maureen, never Mary.
That actually came up to me before. Or have we been calling her Maureen and it's actually Mary? I don't know. We need to get IT on this.
Yeah, why was that?
I don't know. Maybe Vince just decided to change it.
Maybe because I had the Kindle version. You had the audiobook version. I wonder, I didn't even look at what the print one has. I'm
almost positive, at least in Transfer Power, was Maureen.
Oh, no, it's definitely Maureen in all the other books. That's why this caught me off guard. Similarly, Mitch is, or I think later in the second half, so I won't get into it, he uses an alias, and his alias is Mike Cruz.
Right, Mike Cruz. He always uses Mitch Cruz.
He always uses Mitch Cruz, so maybe that was him just changing it up a little bit, using a different alias with the same last name. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, what's in a name? Speaking of names, another friend of the podcast who we just spoke to last week, Rob Richer, he gets a shout out in the acknowledgments in the front of the book. So to my friend Rob Richer, who helped give me the flavor of Beirut in the early 90s. And then at last to you, the reader. So we get a shout out too.
Nice. So another we could talk a lot of pinpoints from specifically, because we don't, in our movie pod, we don't go too deep into book to movie comparisons, but I just got to point this out here. How could this being the dedication of the novel, they take away the Pan Am Lockerbie attack?
Right.
And turn it into some, I don't know. That just really pisses me off. My blood is already boiling.
The Pan Am Lockerbie attack is so central to Mitch's being, to his character, to his essence. And I feel like that automatically, by stripping that from the movie, and yes, I know you need to make certain adjustments for a movie. I understand the visual storytelling is very different. But to strip something so essential to the main, to our hero, I almost said our love of our life, but that wouldn't have gone over with Rosie and Caroline. Sometimes, every once in a while, every night when I curl up with Mitch and on a Kindle, on the screen. Anyway, it's getting weird. Yeah, how do you take that away from him when you portray him on screen? I feel like that's just a big loss. So, yeah, our movie ranting a few weeks from now.
I think this is the last thing I'll say on it, but I think you could have had, you don't want to date yourself. Like, obviously, Pan Am happened, much earlier than when they wanted to set the movie. But you could have easily just had a terrorist attack on a plane and conveyed the same, thing.
True.
I don't get it. I don't get a lot of things about the movie. So anyways, this is not the movie pod. This is the book pod. We'll save those for later. But yes.
Speaking of the book, one last thing I really like. I told you, I was highlighting away that Vince put in the acknowledgments. He thanked everybody, had a long list of people, as he always does, very inclusive of all his support team. And then he wrote, quote, "I have wanted to tell this story for 15 years. How did Mitch Rapp become Mitch Rapp? Crafting this novel has been one of the greatest thrills of my writing career. Thanks to you and your support. Enjoy the read."
Wow, 15 years in the making. That's awesome.
He's been thinking about it. Yeah, I love it. All right, well, he's going to tell the story. Here it is. And we open up in Beirut. Like we just said, our friend Rob Richer really described the city and what it was like in the time period of the late 80s into the early 1990s. And Mitch is in action right away. He's on the ground. He's in the field. So even in the origin story, we start with a more familiar Mitch. He's at least been through his training. And we're going to do a flashback to start the book in chapter 1. So the prelude, kind of cool, huh? Mitch gets taken.
Yeah, I like the, in medias res style here where, we're going to set Mitch get, literally it's a scene from Taken, right? Or where he allows himself to get taken, and then we're not going to go back to it until we fully, tell the entire story. So it really grips the reader, right from the front. And I really enjoyed that. Instead of just starting off with like Irene watching him, at a dojo in a strip mall. I love how they always bring that up. Like he was fighting MMA in a strip mall. How much could he learn from that?
In like a couple of months.
Yeah, in a couple of months. Apparently a lot. You can learn a lot.
Well, like Hurley says, it depends on the teacher. Or maybe Doc says. Depends on if you have a good instructor.
And how motivated you are. And how athletic you are. So
Right.
This scene is just the descriptions of definitely, describing Beirut. I think it starts like Mitch looks at himself in the mirror and sees this man who I get the feeling that he doesn't really know who he is, or he's like sort of questioning himself a little bit.
Right.
And then he sort of steals himself and is like, all right, I'm doing this. I'm going to go get Hurley back. Spoiler alert. Like that's what I got to do. I got to allow myself to get taken in order to get my boys out. So I like that sort of inner monologue between him and himself in the mirror.
Right.
And you only get a couple of sentences about it, but it's just like palpable off the pages.
Yeah. It makes him real too. He doesn't recognize who he's become. And it draws us in as the reader wanting to know more about that journey. If even Mitch doesn't recognize who he's become looking in the mirror, how are we, the reader, gonna be pulled into that story?
Right.
But yeah, he wants to get taken, and he makes it very clear. He looks like a tourist. I think he has a map, and he goes down an alley, and he sees a guy leaning against a wall. He's like, I bet that guy's going to spring off that wall quicker than you expect. And the guy jumps out with a nightstick. But you're right. Hurley's taken. Another friend is taken. It says, One he respected, admired, and liked. The other, Hurley, he respected, admired, and hated. We're getting more, hints, foreshadowing of why is it Rapp hates this guy, yet he's risking his life to save him.
Right.
And another reason for that, Vince writes, is warriors don't like leaving their own to die at the hands of the enemy, because secretly they all know they might be in the same position one day, and they sure as hell hope their country will do everything in their power to get them back. Well, we're going to find out that's part of Rapp's training, knowing full well they will not do everything in their power to get him back. That's how deep his cover is going to have to go. He doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's mentioned like multiple times, like during the next sort of couple chapters we get is Mitch being taken to Lake Anna, to this farm in this farmhouse and doing all this training, right? And Hurley says, you are a ghost. You are a nobody. If you get caught, the government is not going to acknowledge who you are. Right. We don't negotiate with terrorists for hostages. We're definitely not, negotiating with terrorists for your sorry ass. You are, exactly. And if you're okay with that, then you have to be okay with it, right? So,
right. Again, we're not going to talk about it till the movie, but there is a nod to that in the character of Ghost and why he's doing what he does in the movie. So, I guess kind of a nod to this writing and what Vince was going for with that, but
barely.
Yeah, a little nod to it, not much else. Since you mentioned the Lake Anna house, which is not the traditional farm, right?
Right.
The
it's
CIA
not the real
training
farm.
pipeline. Yeah, it's not the Camp Perry farm, but it's Hurley's domain, let's say. Hurley the boss. What he wants goes at the Lake Anna farmhouse.
I'm presuming this is the same house that Mitch and Mike Nash take the guy from, right. What book is it? Oh, Pursuit of Honor, right? In the last book we just read?
Yeah, it's the Extreme Measures Pursuit of Honor.
Continuum.
Yes. Sequel, prequel thing, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is because they even mentioned then that Hurley built it out. He built a more fortified bunker, I think, in the basement.
Oh, right. Since this time. Right,
and right. I think they do say this was, they do give a nod to this is where, many recruits have trained under Hurley. So, yep, I think same house, still around in Pursuit of Honor. And Hurley still running the show.
Yeah, and when Rapp gets there, we start off with a pretty big bang, right? He comes up to Hurley and, I don't know, wisecracking, but just sort of sees that in order to speed things up, he's like, I know you're going to give me shit. And the only way to stop you giving me shit is we need to fight right now.
Yep.
Like, what did you think of Mitch's, reasoning behind that and wanting to do that?
I think it's brilliant because Hurley's giving him all the shit about, and he even says to Hurley, if you're as good as I'm hearing from everybody and I should be scared of you, you're going to know within 20 seconds of looking at me whether I have the goods or not. So if you're going to make your judgment that quick, we might as well jump into it. And Rapp's like, I just want to get to the training where you create me into a terrorist killer and hunter. And so let's get the bullshit out of the way and let's go to the mat. So I think it's a great read by Rapp. And any time you can catch a Hurley and when she finds out a Kennedy off guard and put that type of person on their heels, you've done something right. Even if you're getting yourself into the shit by doing it, you're doing something right if you catch a Stansfield, Hurley, and Kennedy off guard. So I think it's a good play.
Yeah, and speaking of the fight, through the fight we are in mostly, I think we're in entirely Hurley's head during the fight, right? And the descriptions of this fight are pretty cool. It'd be interesting to talk to you, the guys who discuss hand-to-hand combat and pretty much all combat about this fight in particular. And we see a progression. Hurley is very cocky in the beginning,
right?
And then he's like, all right, he's going to do this, and just thinking about what he thinks Mitch is going to do. And then when he go to counter that, he realizes almost instinctively, oh shit, Mitch is not there anymore. And then he gets a side blow or something.
He's quicker than he thought.
The only way he wins this fight is by breaking 2 of the rules that they said.
Right.
Don't grab the nuts and don't
No
don't
face.
no face and
No face, no
he's like,
nuts.
no face, no nuts. And so yeah, like the only way Hurley wins this fight is by cheating.
Now, two things I want to talk about there, because even the subtle details of what Hurley's thinking during the fight, like, oh, shit, he's faster than I thought. I underestimated him, goes back to a conversation Irene had in the car, or at least we get some thinking from Irene on the drive into the farm. She's talking or thinking about recruiting Rapp and why he stood out. And she was following him. So the same way Hurley is going to get caught off guard in the fight, Rapp already did that to Irene because she's tracking him.
Right.
And, she's one of the best, and she has notes and notes that she was working on collecting a file for him. And then one day, when she goes to confront Rapp goes, "Why have you been following me this whole time?" And she's at a loss for words.
She even goes back through her notes and is like, "Where did I slip up?"
Right. She said she agonized over it
Yeah.
for hours and couldn't find a mistake. And this is one of the top professionals in this industry. And Irene is racking her brain. Where did I mess up? What did I miss? And her only conclusion is Rapp had superior situational awareness. He just can read a situation and take in, like, his brain is firing with all these inputs and stimuli. And so she moved his file right to the top of the stack. So basically, from that scene to the fight scene, Hurley and Kennedy have been put on their heels, caught off guard by this kid, and both of them realize he's got something special. Hurley won't admit it yet. He had to break the rules and cheat to win it, and he's gonna still fight to try to kick Rapp out.
He's gonna break some other rules too to try to get him to drop out.
He's gonna do everything he can to get him to drop out and try to get Doc and Stansfield to kick him out. But he realizes this kid has something special if he can read a situation on the mat with me and be a step ahead. So, pretty cool stuff.
I think it's great that Vince made Mitch a lacrosse star.
Right.
I guess you could have had him be any sort of. You could have you couldn't really because of he wanted to have Mitch be sort of a skinnier dude, very athletic, run really well. And when you think about how a lacrosse game goes, you have to, and if you are like a lead, striker I've never played lacrosse, but just imagining, it's the same in basketball, right? The best point guards, right? I'd imagine like Mitch would be a very good point guard, right? Where he could like read the entire floor, or on lacrosse pitch, read the entire pitch, see where all his men are, make the proper passes. And that's why he has this attuned, hypersensitive situational awareness. And then also all of the physical characteristics of, and I love when he's going through the training and he's thinking, he's like, I could run fast. I could,
Yes.
We're running like a 6-minute clip. I could do like a 5-minute clip, but I don't want to, outshine. There's certain things you show you're the front of the class. There's other things where you're just being an asshole.
Yeah.
So.
That too is just Rapp calculating as a
very calculating
23-year-old kid. He's looking at these other guys with much more experience in terms of military training. And even on the obstacle course, he's doing the same thing. He pretends to be more winded than he is at the end, knowing that might have an advantage. If other people underestimate him one day, it can help give him the upper hand. Like, that's some top-level spy shit. And he just intuits that, as a 23-year-old kid. And then also on the obstacle course, he's trying to get in line.
I was going to say that. He places himself in a certain position, hoping that he can actually, because he hasn't run this course, whereas the other guys have been there for a couple of days. He placed him like fourth in line, him thinking that he'll be able to see at least two people go all the way through it. Unfortunately, because they go off like so quickly, he can only see like part of it. But yeah, like he has that situational awareness to place himself in a like, I don't know. I'm not Mitch Rapp, so if I was put in that situation, I don't know where I would go. I would just get in line, I
just cower in the back of the line.
Right. I try to go to the back, just like to be.
It's like one of the most horrifying experiences ever from PE class when they made us do the pull-ups in front of everybody.
Oh yeah, that they shouldn't do that. They
put everybody crisscross applesauce. I wouldn't say Indian style cross-legged because it's not allowed anymore. But everyone's sitting on the floor in the gym, looking at the pull-up bar, and they call your name. And me, the fat ass kid who always got excused for asthma has to go up. I basically every year would just go touch the bar, sit down. I wouldn't even try. Because what am I going to do? Spend 10 seconds? Can't pull up. What? No, just touch the bar, sit down.
They were forced to have 4 guys lift me up so I could actually lift me up and then put me down.
I love that. Teamwork. That's a good message.
What's the point of that? What's the point of that? I couldn't do one. I was so fat I couldn't do one.
I remember the mile. Oh, I hated the mile.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my God. Every year I would
always cheat at the mile. I would always cheat at the mile.
Oh, I'd always be cutting corners. I wanted to be sick on that day. I just wanted to make any excuse to stay home on the mile day. We
didn't have a track, so we ran around the parking lot, and
same.
Apparently my coach had drove it in her car and figured out that it was roughly 10 laps was a mile. And so it's easy to track when you're doing 4 miles. All right, did this kid actually do 4 miles? But when it's 10, you have 30 some kids. So you just had to put up your fingers. How many you're doing? Roughly around lap. 7. Around 7, I would skip to 9 or 6. I would skip to 8 or something like that.
Oh man, that's good stuff.
I wish I could go back and do the mile now because I would crush my mile time.
You're the runner now. That's right.
I'm not a real runner. I can't do a 5-minute clip like Mitch Rapp, but I could at least break 8, I think. Which is, people listen to this pod and they're 8. That's not fast at all. I used to be 330 pounds.
Right. Yeah. There used to be 2 Chris's.
So there used to be 2 Chris's. And I shed one of them.
Yeah, you did. You're a whole Chris down.
So.
Oh, that's funny. You notice, though, we've been at the farm for quite a while. What do you think? Because I think this is a bit out of character. It's a different style Vince is taking by leaving us for 8 chapters in a row. Chapters 1 through 8, we're all in the same scene. We're with Mitch. We're with Hurley. We're learning about the training. The fight goes down. We didn't even cut or jump to the B plot or the terrorist plot yet. I like that. I think that makes this scene a hallmark. And I think chapters 1 through 8 in American Assassin might just be definitely in my top 2 or 3 scenes ever in all Mitch Rapp. From Kennedy dropping him off to the fight and the training. I love that we don't cut scene and jump to something else in the middle of it. Makes it memorable.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show how important Vince thought this was, that no other story plot needed to, it's gripping enough. People really want to just read this. Let's not distract them with any other information. Right. This is so important to his development and really becoming, you're seeing for the first time, Mitch becoming Mitch. So yeah, no, I love the fact that we don't, because that's one of the things sometimes I don't like, because I just want to keep staying with one character or one story plot. I want to know, and I don't care about going back to. We get a little bit later on where, we're going over to the Syrian guy who he goes over to Russia, and it's I don't really care about that yet. Give me back with Hurley and Rapp when they're in Germany,
Right. So true.
So, but yeah, I just think it shows how important Vince thought this whole section was.
Also, I think sometimes that's required to build the hype and the tension. I think of Memorial Day. In the back of our minds, we're thinking, who is that terrorist who just took that boat through the Florida Keys and landed in a swamp? Who are these terrorists and what are they doing training in South America, in whichever one that was. So it builds the hype. But here, we don't need that distraction. We don't need that hype. We had the prelude, 1. And we know what Mitch is going to do throughout his career. So we don't need, I think, that hook to catch us because we're totally caught with what's going on here. And it allows other characters and their dynamics, not in a faraway place, cut scene, but right here. Because you have not only, like we mentioned, the Kennedy-Hurley conflict of, Kennedy wants him and knows he fits the profile. Hurley calls him a little punk who has no experience and refuses to accept him. Then you get Victor, who Rapp is onto something. Why is this loudmouth recruit, who's also slower than all of us, never getting yelled at by the instructors?
And someone who would stand out in a crowd.
He would stand out in a crowd. He's his neck looks like a thigh muscle, like it looks like a leg. And Rapp's like, they would never be able to, that guy does not fit the description of this job. And Rapp is already thinking, I'm going to have to eliminate him because he's getting special treatment and there's something deeper here, which I don't know what it is. Later on, he does conclude he's an instructor.
Right.
Yeah.
One other thing about the training that's interesting to me, right? So why are we having this training? What's the purpose of this? And we don't find out really until later on. What we have, learned about this from previous books, right? It's the Orion team. We're looking at the birth of the Orion team. And the CIA has been taken out by diplomats and America has got out of the game. And this is even referenced by, I think, the Russian and also,
Syed.
I'm blanking on his name. Syed, yes. And how they're out of the game.
Yeah, we don't strike back.
But now they want to get back in. And Stansfield is now in charge. He's not yet the director, but he's now the director of operations. And he's this war dog veteran from, he went behind the Iron Curtain. We've learned about in previous books about all of his, endeavors, right? And he is a hands-on guy. So he wants, people are getting picked off in Lebanon, right? They're taking American businessmen. They're taking our operatives and they're torturing them. But we're not hitting back.
Right.
So we need boots on the ground, and this is one way to do it. And exactly, we need people that are going to go into urban places, blend in.
Yes.
Another reason why Rapp is able to deduce that Victor can't go in an urban place. He'd stick out like a military thumb.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons, ultimately, why Rapp gets chosen. Not many of the reasons, but he's raw. He doesn't look like he doesn't scream military training,
Right.
So he can go into these places. I'm sure later on, Rapp in, transfer of power or Rapp in, not transfer of power, but Rapp in transfer of power, or any of the books we've read, you see him now and it's like, oh yeah, he's definitely like an operative, especially the way he looks. But I always vision Rapp looking a little bit different than, like let's say, a Scott Coleman, right?
Sure.
Scott was in charge of the SEALs.
Big time.
Screams military. Rapp just screams killer.
Yeah, right. A secret killer.
Secret killer.
Well, here you mentioned Stansfield, and we've got to give a nod to him. I feel like the second half we'll talk more about his exploits with Hurley back in the day, because Hurley does a lot of reminiscing. He shares a lot of stories about what he's been through. And so I feel like we're going to get there. But Stansfield shows up here. He does visit the farm. He's interested in Kennedy's recruit. And all the blame's going to be on him, right? So if Stan is right, that Rapp is just this little, scrawny kid who we can't have do this kind of job and isn't cut out for it, ultimately Stansfield's going to take the hit because he greenlit the Orion team. He appointed Kennedy to get the people and Hurley to select them. So he's going to take the hit. And then he explains it like this. The game was changing. They needed a weapon more surgical than any guided bomb or cruise missile. Having spent many years in the field himself, Stansfield also knew this person would have to be uniquely autonomous, someone who conveniently had no record. And then Kennedy later on says, as her mentor, Thomas Stansfield, told her many times, great spies don't complain about the rules. They find ways around them. And that goes to both the Victor and the fight with Hurley. Victor's breaking all these rules and getting away with it. Hurley breaks the rules in the fight, grabs Rapp's nuts, seems to get away with it. And so Rapp's starting to put together this picture that this training all about discipline and whatnot is bullshit. This training's not about discipline. This training's about doing whatever it takes. And that third objective that they're trying to get with the Orion team is not, symmetrical warfare. We hit them like they hit us, or, just retribution. They did this to us. We do a little thing like this. We hit some, arms depots. No, this training is about breaking the rules, doing whatever it takes for our definition of justice. Retribution, as Vince is going to explain to the doc, retribution. They're going to find ways around the rules because that's all that matters. And Rapp's getting this as part of his education by watching Hurley break rules, watching Victor break rules. And Rapp says enough is enough and decides to break Victor's arm. Love that fight scene. Another fight.
Another fight scene.
Towards the end of their training. You know, I mentioned Doc Lewis a lot. We got to talk about him, no?
Yes, we get a little backstory on him as well. He's a former military. I think it's also mentioned that he looks very, powerful. Not. At first, I was thinking of Doc Lewis. I guess when we first meet him in one of the earlier books, I always envisioned him as like, I don't know, your typical psychiatrist.
Right.
But here he's, he rides a motorcycle.
Yeah, flowing blonde locks.
He. A little bit of a badass, but he's also like cultured. He likes good wine. He likes good food.
He can cook.
He's an interesting character. I would love to see like we haven't seen much more of him, after this one, maybe Kill Shot. I would love like a Dr. Lewis book. You could do a lot with that, especially because he mentions that he talks to, some senators, but a lot of like senators' wives, and you could do a lot with that character. So yeah, Doc Lewis. Very integral part in really like assessing that Mitch is the guy, and that Hurley needs to get over whatever he has,
right?
Problems with Mitch, and see that sure we miss the fact that he can fight, but the better thing that we should take from that is that it took him 6 months to do something like that, and he's a really good listener, or not listener, but a really good learner. If you teach him something, he will learn it and he will perfect it and he will make it better. Even with the shooting scene, right? Mitch knew that going into it, he was most likely going to be going up against people who are better shots than him. Clearly, you're going against like some Navy SEALs, some Marine, sniper people, but I think one of the sergeants who decides to stay back and give him some pointers. Like by the end of their third clip, Mitch, has most of the shots within like a concentric circle.
Right.
And the sergeant says, "You're coachable, kid. That's good."
Yeah, quick learner.
And I think even by the time we get to the Hamburg scene,
the operation,
which is, I think, only like 6 more months in the future, or maybe 8 more months in the future, Hurley says, "You're not as good as me, kid, but you're still pretty good." Like within 8 months, like Hurley's calling him good. So obviously he's becoming really good with the gun, which we know he's going to be great with the gun. I just think back to that scene in Extreme Measures where it's like less than 30 seconds. He takes out 5 guys, right? Or 6 guys.
Right. So. And he learned that.
Oh, and the scene in Transfer of Power where he's like going through the like, look at him now.
Right.
Barely could hold a gun. Not barely hold a gun, but like, barely. Most of it was in the vicinity of the body.
He couldn't really shoot. Yeah.
No, to placing shots exactly where he wants them.
Right.
He progresses a lot in that front.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that just speaks to Hurley and his trainers and the team he put together. The only thing in the way of Hurley being successful with starting the Orion team is his own ego. And Kennedy and Doc Lewis are just chipping away at Hurley, saying, like, we know he can't shoot. We know he doesn't have military training and experience, but that's why he's moldable. We have a blank slate. He doesn't have to unlearn bad habits. He's actually got some pretty good ones. And he has this instinctual situational awareness, like, this meets our profile. And Hurley, over time he's going to crack. But only thanks to Doc Lewis. Did you catch? Rapp did actually quit.
He did.
Rapp tapped out after the Victor fight, and Hurley comes in the middle of the night, beats the shit out of him in the middle of the night, beats the crap out of him, runs him into the ground, and then says, "Let's rematch." And Hurley obviously wins, and Rapp is thinking, wait, Hurley didn't win. He fucked me. He woke me up at 4 a.m., beat the crap out of me, beat the daylights out of me, made me run and train the whole day, then fought me in the afternoon. Like, that's not an even footing. And so Rapp's sick of it. Hurley's telling him, we want to throw you out because you broke Victor's arm. He's one of our friends. He doesn't tell him he's one of the instructors, but Rapp pretty much knows by now. And Rapp says, it's all bullshit then. If you guys break the rules, but I can't break the rules, and you're training me to do a job that requires us all to break the rules and figure this shit out, and you don't recognize that I'm doing that, I'm done with it. He starts walking away. He literally says, I quit. And Doc Lewis says, "You're ready. You're ready. Don't leave. I will actually promise you that we'll get to the real training. We'll teach you how to be an assassin. You're even going to learn our names." And Doc Lewis convinces him to stay and says, "We're taking you to the next level of your training." And that actually causes him to graduate, if you will.
Yeah, it's like Mitch unlocks the purpose of the first couple days. He realizes what the situation is, and that this is not boot camp. This is not basic.
No,
it's something different.
Yep. He even says to Doc Lewis, "Hopefully you're going to turn me into a weapon, a killer." And the doc says, "So if it comes to it, you'd have no problem taking another man's life?" Well, that depends. On what? Who the guy is, and more important, what he's guilty of. And that's when Doc Lewis says, "You're ready, kid." And Rapp explains his theory on retribution and how that does square with his Catholic, dogma. And the doc even tries to corner him and say, "Hey, but you're a Christian. That won't really, go well with your Lord and Savior's teaching of forgiveness and turn the other cheek." And Rapp goes, "Bullshit. I hate when people do selective theology." And Doc's like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You just picked a New Testament line that people love to throw around for one purpose. Let's look at the text as a whole." And he throws some Old Testament quotes at him and says, "See, retribution's also in the Bible." And so now Doc Lewis is like, there's a whole nother psychological thing going on, but we need this dude, out in the field.
Right. It really shows Mitch's mental capacity. Maybe he could be a grad student at Brown studying theology.
No. Do not go there. Do not go there. Do not.
Another fail from the movie. Anyways.
The American Assassin movie. Yeah. I mean, you know what that reminded me though, when he's going back and forth with Doc Lewis, and even the doc is surprised of Rapp's mental gymnastics, that he's already in his mind kind of figured this all out and the way he sees the world. That reminds me of the committee rooms. All the times Mitch is in a committee room and he's thinking a step ahead of the argument of the politicians and the senators. The way he's doing that and outmaneuvering Doc Lewis in his conversations, to me, shows how he's going to grow and be able to do that with the highest levels on Capitol Hill and in the executive branch, and still outmaneuver, outreason, and outargue them.
And also in terms of when he's doing interrogation,
Right.
In the various forms that we see him trying to gain information from, anyone, whether it be a terrorist or someone who's implicated, we just see that he has this capacity to outthink and think quickly in order to get what he wants out of his subject, or manipulate the subject by, because he'll throw some similar things that he was talking about religion with the doc, with the religion in terms of the terrorists.
He'll do that with the terrorists.
He'll do the same thing. We've seen it, it's great. And I guess that's one of the benefits of writing this origin story. What book is this? 15, right? Or 15 years after the first book comes out. So you can really show how Mitch has had these same inclinations, these same attributes from the very beginning that we've seen throughout the other books.
Right. That's the farm, man. I love it. That is some memorable writing, amazing dynamics between characters. Gripping stuff from Vince. 15 years to think of and plot out and plan the story, and boy did he deliver. He was just ready for it. Anything else you wanted to cover from the farm area, or should we jump into what's going on in Beirut? Because we do have the terrorists plotting.
Yes.
We do have a lot going on there.
Right.
Which later on is where Rapp's going to get captured. So we know Beirut is going to play a role with Rapp coming at some point.
Yeah, so Rapp, quote unquote, graduates, right? Gets his 6 months of training, and I guess his timetable has stepped up because of what's going on in Beirut, right? They've taken a couple businessmen. They've even captured a couple CIA operatives who, one Stansfield did not want to send in, and another that just got taken. And so Rapp's ready to be unleashed. And so we meet this group, a lot of different players, right? We have someone who's in charge of intelligence for Syria. We have another head of fatwa. We have an Iranian guy, a Palestinian guy, right? We have sort of a who's who of what's going on with the underground underworld of Lebanon, and this is going to be the main story that sort of takes over the second half of the book.
Right. And it's less about we have to go get our guys back. Like, Rapp's not being trained to go get some guys back. He's being trained to show the enemy we're willing to hit back. And you can't do this to us and get away with it, and to keep them in check. So, yeah, they got our guys. We're ready to send the Orion team after them. And so here's what I love. You mentioned it. This team that's assembled in Beirut. Because I have heard this criticism, and I think it's very legit, of some, not just thrillers, but some elements of Western media, right? Movies, TV, books. It's always the big bad Arab terrorist. And that is the description. That is the essence of the character. Bad guy, evil, and Arab. Well, Vince does not do that at all. He does not tell a single story about the villains. Instead, he gets at a deeper and real world dynamic, and even jumps into the internal divisions of these groups of terrorists, where you said, like, there's a Syrian intelligence officer running the show in Lebanon, which was absolutely true. Damascus was like the one pulling the strings. But then again, the Iranians are on the ground. There's a Quds Force commander, Colonel Jalil, which shows the Shiites are playing a role in Lebanese politics, which is Hezbollah. They were literally funding a proxy terrorist group to do their dirty work in the Israel, Palestinian territory, Lebanon region. So that the Iranians were really pulling the strings. And then finally, there's this guy from Fatah, the Palestinian organization of basically refugees across the border from Israel, and they're looked down upon. So to me, there's not a single story of like all people from the Middle East are like this. He's really showing these divisions. And Sayed, even at one time, who's the Syrian, he says they look down on the Palestinians like trash. He's like, Fatah is just a bunch of thugs. The only thing we'll use Palestinians for is as a buffer from the Jews or as cannon fodder against the Christian militias. Like, these guys have divisions based on their ethnicities, and Vince really gets at that. And I think a city like Beirut in the late 80s and the 90s, these power players were not just Lebanese or Palestinian. There were Iranians pulling the strings. There were the Syrians, involved. And I think it's really important that Vince has those characters and represents those perspectives instead of just making, there's an Arab terrorist.
Right.
I think that's important.
He captures like what's actually going on over there.
Right.
And it gives more context to, this is not just some made up story of, some guy from Saudi Arabia or some guy from Kuwait, some guy from Iraq has a WMD and wants to take us out, whatever. It's getting at, all right, this is what's actually going on. This is why we need to assemble the Orion team. This is what they're doing. Yes, it's fictionalized, but you could see something like this actually happening. And we're placing Mitch in this real story. Right.
Speaking of the real story, we're going to have a guest in a few weeks as well, who quite literally wrote the book on Beirut. I reached out to Fred Burton, one of our followers on social media, someone we've been listening to, and he was also on Jack Carr's Danger Close podcast, talking about his career in intelligence, and he even wrote a book, Beirut Rules, which is all about this time period, from the kidnapping of our station chief, William F. Buckley, to the Civil War in Lebanon, to Reagan sending in the Marines. He basically covers this whole time period. And so I'm really excited to ask him about these descriptions that Vince gives us, because the same way Vince is describing the texture of these meetings between the Islamic Jihad, he's also giving us the feel of the city. I loved how this Martyrs Square was created, and it was a bombed out neighborhood from the Civil War. And you had the Maronite Christian militias claiming land, basically taking over bombed out apartment buildings just to gain another inch of territory. So then the Shiites would move in and they would take a few buildings on the other half of the square. They'd have full, fully armed weapons and armaments pointed right at each other, but it's a ceasefire. So even during a ceasefire in the Civil War, the Shiites are outmaneuvering, because this is really a majority Sunni area, who for a while during the ceasefire were actually quite peaceful in a time of détente with the Christians, the Druze, and all the other minority groups living in the region. And Iran decides to get in, right? And send in kind of Islamic Hezbollah and other people to prop up Islamic Jihad. And it's like, the people on the ground did not want that. They were the ones stirring the pot, even in a time of peace. And I love the tension that Vince is building just by looking at the city of Beirut and who's taking which buildings and which areas. And there's this green line. It's like a scar across the city, a no man's land. And they're slowly inching closer and closer. The Christian militias on one side, the Shiite armies of Islamic Jihad on the other. And I just love that kind of writing. So we're going to talk to Fred Burton about how realistic that is and what Vince captured about this time period in a really, really fascinating part of history.
Yeah, that, and I love this other description of how I think either one of the drivers like makes a movement or changes how he drives or like ducks under something, and he realizes, oh, sorry, it's a force of habit. Like I don't need to do that anymore because it's a ceasefire. But because they're in this area that, normally in the past you wouldn't cross or you wouldn't dare be driving through it. But this tension is still in them because it's so raw. It's so, fresh that they would have this in there. Those little touches just add way more nuance to the story than, just describing some generic scene. Right.
And Rob told us last week, who was station chief in many places throughout the region, and later chief of Near East Division at the CIA, he said Vince gets that right and takes our stories and makes them real. Like the story about dogs, how Rapp is always a little uneasy with dogs. That was Rob in Yemen shooting at wild dogs, attacking him. And
we get a lot of that here.
Right. We'll bring Fred on to say again how Vince, knocked this out of the park, describing the tensions of Beirut.
All right. So the next thing that we get is Rapp going on his first mission.
First kill.
And getting his first kill, right? So it's been 6 months. I love this. There's this one line where Rapp's like, yeah, it's been 6 months, and I've slowly been seeing that I'm drifting away from my friends, because he has this new drive, new passion in life. And he's like, it's not that I don't like my friends anymore. He said he's always been a guy that relied heavily on his friendships. Even as a kid, he would, he couldn't walk by a park or a field and not hop on and play with somebody that he knew. But now he has a different purpose, a different call. And he's this man on a one-way mission to be the integral part of the Orion team. And he's tasked to go to Istanbul, where his first target is an arms dealer, a dirty arms dealer, who's been supplying arms to many different terrorists and Russians. And he's sent to be the first guy in, do surveillance, set up, make sure the safe house is all good. And we get some really cool spy stuff in this book. Mm-hmm. I love the spy stuff. Like, that's one of the reasons why I love the third option, just like the amount of spycraft that we get to see Mitch do. I love when we see Mitch do spycraft, because he is a spy. He's an assassin. Yes, he's an operative, but he's a spy, and I love when we see that. And right, he goes in to the building. I think he has something I'm blanking on what it specifically was, but one of the guys at technology made him this thing to scan the room, and he gets his briefcase that is in the bottom drawer and pops it out and has assortment of guns, the dossier, and he reads the dossier, he studies it all on Sharif. And this is going to be a key thing that is brought up later with his conversation with Stansfield, critiquing why he decided to act before. Because the plan is, right, he comes in, checks it out, does surveillance, runs surveillance on him. Then Hurley and Richards come in, who is Fred he's the other guy that made it out of the training. His real name is Richards. And they're going to be there, and there's a different plan. I don't know if we actually ever figure out what they were actually going to do. Probably Hurley was going to kill him, right? So, but upon reading this dossier, Mitch, like, something pops into Mitch's head. This would be a good opportunity to take him out.
Right.
And then the next morning, that leads him to go on a run, with a weapon. And when he sees his opportunity, he gets revenge or retribution and takes him out. But it's like this little scene, the fact that he can read something, like he got the information hours before and realizes, all right, actually, whatever we're going to do, that's not what we should do. We need to get in, get out. I see an opportunity. Yes, he probably shouldn't have sat next to him, but still, like, that's what Stansfield sees in him. And that's why Stansfield decides to stick with him. The fact, like, he it's not like he read it a week ago and he was planning this whole thing out. It's like, before I go to bed, I'm thinking about it, and then boom, I make the call to action right there. And I think everyone agrees that was a good call to do that.
Yeah.
His antics, maybe not, but
that report plays a really important role because you're right. Rapp reads it and figures out there's an opportunity here. So he has that situational awareness and can visualize what's going on and the right time to act, even through the written word, right? Reading a report, and in his mind, he can formulate that plan and pick it apart and find, oh, this guy has a routine where he walks the dog, same time every week. He sits on this bench in the park, which kind of reminded me of Louis Gould. Louis Gould in Consent to Kill, planning in the park. And he's like, it's just too easy. I could follow someone into the park, know where all the security cameras are, pop them, get out, make it clean. And I feel like Rapp
put some balloons up.
he put the balloons up, block the cameras. Rapp instinctually sees that. Park, bench, routine. He walks this way every day. I don't know if there's a parallel at all between the two, but in my mind, that helps me see that Vince is saying, remember that guy Louis Gould who nearly and should have killed Rapp? Rapp is going to be even better than him because Rapp can do this as a 23-year-old kid with 6 to 8 months of training.
Right.
And we're seeing that same kind of thinking and expertise and follow through, even though he's going to get reamed out for it. Hurley's like, kick him out. He broke protocol. Kennedy's a little like, oh shit, Mitch, like, this is your first time out in the field, and he went for it. And then Stansfield even talks to them about it. And there's another cool detail about the report. Because Rapp is talking to Stansfield and says, and the British supplied us all the intelligence on Sharif when I was in Istanbul. And Stansfield's like, who told you that? And he goes, no one told me that, but I know it from the report. Stansfield's like, what the fuck? The report didn't say the Brits. Rapp just read the sentence structure and the cadence of the language and how it was in the syntax and knew this was not an American writer. Like, this dude's good.
He's really good. Like, this kid's a 23-year-old out of college.
He's a prodigy.
And has never, it's not like he's been in the service for years. He's fresh. And the fact that he's able to pick up on these little minute details, it's amazing. And you really see how skilled he is.
Now, here's something, though, because we're going to come full circle with this. Retribution, not revenge. I was also thinking of another theme. Never make it personal.
Yes.
Kennedy tells him in the car.
That should be our title.
Driving to the farm. Remember, it's never personal. And Rapp in his mind goes, see, that's where we disagree. This whole thing is personal.
It's always personal.
And then Hurley tells him the same thing. Take the emotion out of it. Just be a cold-hearted killer. And Rapp says, oh, okay. Nope. Rapp in his mind is saying, it's personal. The reason I'm doing this is for retribution. Retribution is always personal because it's deserved. Well, when Rapp's about to pull the trigger under his windbreaker, he looks at Sharif and says, I need to see him face to face. And in the moment, his emotions kind of take over, but in a good way, in a way that allows him to look at Sharif face to face and say, how do you sleep at night with what you've done? Because Sharif sold the specific materials in the Lockerbie bombing to Islamic Jihad through the Russians. He was the broker in Turkey from the Russians to Syed and the terrorist groups in the Middle East. And Rapp says, I need to see him eye to eye before I kill him. He has a phone. Rapp, through the windbreaker, shoots the phone out of his hand. Says, I'm not going to wait for him to spew lies at me. I ask him, how do you sleep with yourself? How do you put up with yourself at night knowing you did this? What? Boom. 1, 2, 3, all in the bridge of the nose.
It's great.
He made it
it's
personal.
Great. It's a great first kill. He made it personal. And that was the one thing I liked about the movie. Just to jump in there, the scenes where Hurley is telling him to, you can't make it personal, because that ultimately is a downfall. And we do see like Mitch slip up a little bit later on in other novels when especially when I think about Irene. I mean, ultimately he gets Irene back in what is that? Protect and Defend, right?
Protect and Defend. Yep.
And that's one of the reasons why they don't want him on that case. He's too close to the heart. It's too close to the vest.
Yep.
He also tells Mike Nash in Extreme Measures, or is it Pursuit of Honor?
Yep. When they take his kid.
When they take his kid, it's too personal for you, man.
You got to step back.
You got to step away. And to see Rapp, this is just the last book. To see Rapp from then or now until then, it's a flip, and he's realized that you can't have these things. You have to sort of think about it rationally. And, I think every now and then it does flare up for Rapp, and it adds to a little bit of flair in situations. I
think Kyle picked up on that. Looking long term, Rapp now in the game for 20, 30 years? Just under 20 years. I think Kyle picked up on Rapp does change, because if he's lying to Kennedy and Hurley and saying, well, secretly I'm going to be motivated by personal retribution, but I'm going to do it in such a honed way, it's going to drive my passion, it's going to fuel me, combined with my situational awareness and that kind of, head on a swivel mentality, he'll be okay and can get away with it being personal for a little while. As he ages, as he has injuries, as he sees how the game is played, he's going to start changing and becomes a little bit more cynical. There are times where he has to check himself, almost turning into a robot assassin killer. And remember, we don't take out innocent, we don't take out cops, we don't take out innocent guys unless they're in bed with, the bad guys. We don't take out bodyguards unless those bodyguards are, guarding somebody and they willingly know that they've done bad things. Rapp has just become a little more cynical in his older age. And I think maybe Vince did little changes like that when he tells Nash to step back in Pursuit of Honor. And Kyle has ran with that and showed Vince really. And now Claudia is trying to tell modern day Mitch, you might have to step back because your country might not even want you anymore. Mitch is dealing with deeper things. It's not just so personal. He's going to do it every time and get his personal revenge and go off and be a hothead. Claudia's trying to warn him, America's changing. You're changing. I think Vince would be proud that Kyle picked up on those shifts in character.
Yeah. No, that's great. I hadn't thought about that. That is really, Kyle definitely picked up on that. And I liked how Rapp has changed a little bit in these past couple novels. Right.
Well, what do you think? Rapp's first kill. We'll pick up part 2 with the fallout, with the aftermath, when Kennedy gets a voicemail, and the voicemail has the cryptic code confirming that it was Rapp who made the kill.
I kept on finding, I was laughing because the guy who comes in and says, after she gets that voicemail, his name is Max Powers. Wasn't that a video game, Max Powers?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. That's just such an interesting name to choose for a guy. But anyways, yes, this is a good place to stop. That was a great conversation about the farm and Rapp's first kill. First kill of many. Yeah, can't wait to talk about it next time.
Yes, and speaking of part 2, man, do we have a lot to look forward to next week. From hearing more about Hurley's exploits and his younger years in the field, in Lebanon and other places. We even get to meet the Ohlmeyers and a certain lady, Greta, who is going to be such an important person in this part of Rapp's life. Although we don't hear much about her at really any other point, but the scenes with her are pretty great, and that will also take us into Killshot as well. And then some really awesome action You know Vince is the master of this closeout, race to the finish line action sequence, and this one really pays off. Remember, he was taken, so we know he's captive in Beirut. We know there's somebody he hates, there's somebody he likes that their life is in his hands, and he's on the ground ready to get him back and do whatever it takes to get retribution. A lot to look forward to next week.
Hey guys, I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome back to this week's No Limits, a Mitch Rapp live podcast. How you doing this week, Mike?
It's happening. We're live. I'm great. I was just listening a little while ago to our Fred Burton episode, and man, what a delight it was last week to talk to that guy. A true American hero.
That was a very good podcast. A really nice treat to talk to him. Like I said, at the end of the last one, I could have sat there and talked to him for hours. So
right. Kind of like we're going to do tonight with American Assassin Part 2.
Yes, who knows? It might go for a couple hours. Although we have some listeners on here who one's on her lunch break, so we need to keep it. I don't know how long of a lunch you get wherever you are. So where you know where she's from, right, Mike?
If that's Mika, you can see the names. Then
yes.
New Zealand.
Oh, New Zealand. Oh, okay, that makes sense now. Like lunch, it's 9 o'clock here. Yes.
Other side of the globe.
Wow.
They love Mitch Rapp everywhere. Mitch Rapp is universal.
It is.
Well, we love seeing the comments coming in, so thank you guys. We can have some of them right here up on our screen. We will try to respond to as many as we can. Always good to have Mika and Don, one of our patrons, with us from the very beginning. Welcome. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Yes, thank you. And speaking of patrons,
right,
you guys get a special treat. You get to see us spin the wheel live. So we got to do our monthly giveaway. So this Mike just put it up on the screen. We have a Blu-ray American Assassin with all the special features. Mike actually tested it out for you, so it actually works.
The special features do work. They have been watched once, and the movie was watched once and will not be watched again.
Never again.
At least in this household. We hope one of our patrons who help support the show enjoys it. If you already have a Blu-ray copy of the movie, we are happy to purchase a paperback, a thriller paperback of your choice. But if you don't have the Blu-ray disc, this will be yours. All right, I'm going to spin the wheel to keep us moving. Here we go. Which of our fabulous patrons will get this? Oh, the evil book lady, one of my favorite Twitter handles, Julie S. Congrats.
Yes, congrats, evil book lady.
I'll be reaching out to you, see if you want this copy of Blu-ray or perhaps any other thriller paperback that we can ship your way.
Yes.
I think we have a couple other listener shout-outs, not just our patrons.
We do. So speaking of the movie and how much Mike, it's funny, Don just posted in the chat, Mike can't get rid of that copy fast enough. But yeah, speaking of Mika from New Zealand, we got our very first listener submitted limerick. So this time I'm going to read it to you, Mike, since I'm not good at writing them, but I'm good at reading stuff.
Regale me with it, please.
I think I am. All right. The origin story of our favorite assassin. A film Mike hates with a passion. It didn't follow the book, leaving longtime Mitch fans shook. Hopefully he can pretend it didn't happen. That's a good one. Good job, Mika. I like that a lot.
That's it. You know what? I'm going to see what international postage looks like because we promised a sticker to anyone who submitted a limerick. And so, Mika, you came through for us. So let me look into international shipping rates and see if we can get you a sticker out your way of the world.
You might as well send a bookmark too, since you're going to go through all that effort.
I think we have 2 of those left, so let's do that. But if you would like to get your own stickers, that's right. You would like to get your own stickers and bookmarks. You can help support financially what we're doing here at Mitch Rapp Pod. by visiting patreon.com/MitchRappPod. And also what you'll be helping fund is our commitment to give back to the military community through Operation Paperback. We, next month, will be hitting the 200 mark of how many Vince Flynn books and thrillers we put in the hands, thanks to you guys, the patrons, of our troops and veterans. So every bit helps out with that effort and keeping the podcast alive. Thank you, guys.
Yes. Awesome.
All right. Well, there was one other listener we would like to shout out who left us a voicemail. And this person, you could tell they must work in the intelligence business because they're anonymous. They did not tell us who they are. So it's a covert voicemail, but had a really good reading suggestion. Some of you listeners will probably have read this one. Surprise, Kill, Vanish, The Secret History of CIA Paramilitary Armies, Operators, and Assassins by Annie Jacobson. So thank you for that suggestion, mystery or clandestine caller. But he also asked in the voicemail, have you heard of Billy Waugh? W-A-U-G-H.
No.
I hadn't, right? But I had to look it up because he asked, I think after reading this book with Annie Jacobson, he might be the real Stan Hurley. And I looked him up. This dude is 91, supposedly is still a contractor with the CIA. At 70, I think 71 or something, he was on the ground, boots on the ground in Afghanistan. 91. And he's an operator with the CIA. And before that, I think he was Army Special Forces. I guess Green Berets, if I'm not mistaken. So this guy was asking.
This reminds me of, what's the book where like they bring Hurley out of retirement and he goes on the mission with Gould, and we're gonna get to that in the next couple months. But yeah, that reminds me of just this guy like Hurley with a cane.
Is that The Last Man?
I think it might be The Last Man.
Yeah, because he's still around. That's right. I think he is.
Or is it The Survivor? I don't know. It's one of the two.
Oh yeah, I think Kyle brings him out. Hey, we're gonna get there in the next
we're gonna get there.
Few weeks here. So one other thing that he mentioned in the book when I looked it up was that Billy Waugh, this 91-year-old Special Forces CIA operative, he wrote a book called Hunting the Jackal about his exploits, I guess decades in covert operations, and particularly that title is about hunting Carlos the Jackal, which Fred Burton just told us he was also doing through his career. So we've got a real-life Stan Hurley, maybe a Thomas Stansfield in our midst. It's pretty awesome, the people we're meeting and learning about their stories through this podcast.
Yeah, it's very cool. Actually, I was texting you before we went on, and I went to this wedding this weekend, and I think I have lined up 3 interviews. Two people with the FBI. One was a polygrapher. One did the fingerprinting of Saddam Hussein, and the third is just an ambassador. Ambassador of Brazil. So we got a couple of cool guests coming for you guys. We try to keep those coming. We like meeting these amazing people who have done amazing things in the intelligence community. So
right. Well, our ambassadors and our State Department are always, we hope, collaborating with the CIA and the chief of station in their embassy. So that would be a really cool one to get on the show.
Yes.
Nice. All right. Well, I think that does it for our shout-outs. So please, the last thing we can ask of you is give us 5 stars in the Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen. A rating really helps. Great way to give back. And Chris, what's coming next? What are we doing today?
All right. Today we are doing American Assassin Part 2. Yay! Sorry, it's been kind of crazy here. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm currently in my laundry room, my new laundry room. I'm set up on a mini fridge, and I'm sitting on a cooler
of beer
because it's empty, unfortunately.
Damn.
And because I don't have my podcast studio set up yet. This I feel like was the best. Essentially, it was the room farthest away from the kids. Let's just put it that way.
I was going to say, where are their bedrooms in relation to this laundry room?
2 floors up. 2 floors up.
Perfect.
So,
mint.
I apologize if there's any weird sounds coming out of this room. But yeah, so that's why we've had delayed, because I moved. And last week I lost my microphone. I have a new microphone. It's just been crazy. But anyways, we're here. We're back. We're live. We're doing American Assassin Part 2.
We're keeping it positive.
I can't wait.
We're keeping it positive.
Wait. Oh,
yeah, let's
positive vibes. Positive vibes only, Mike.
You know what brings positive vibes to this podcast?
Oh, I think I know. But tell
My
me.
favorite way to review a book is in the form of a limerick.
You wouldn't say.
Here we go. There once was an American assassin, fully trained and sent to kick some ass in. Geneva, Zurich, Beirut. Professional hits you cannot dispute. Bastards of Islamic Jihad, he's blastin'. The first or the 11th rap book? Which reading order have you took? It doesn't matter. The competition is shattered. Rap's origin story has me shook.
That's funny. Both you and Mika use that has me shook or has them shook. That's funny.
I think I like Mika's more. I think she wins the limerick battle of tonight.
The limerick off. Well, that was good. That was a good one, Mike. And it's funny you brought up the first or 11th.
Right.
I'd be interested to know what most people do, because I feel like for me, I started, obviously, I always do publication order. But I feel like most people do American Assassin first.
Right. I've encountered that on social media. That is by far the more common way people have encountered the books.
Yeah. I don't know, it just adds, like, I feel like you build up this character, and then it's so much, it's a little more rewarding when, like, you come back, like, pre-visit it, because you get all these little hints.
Right.
I don't know. We could do a whole pod on, like, the pros and cons of each one. But.
Right. I was so excited. Was it Protect and Defend, where we meet an old Stan Hurley, or Extreme Measures, maybe, in the Lake Anna house, which is now a full-on bunker. And
yeah, Extreme Measures. Right.
That was almost like a treat when you got American Assassin. You were like, oh, I get the backstory on this guy. So
yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, we got a theme for today, and I picked this one. Chris, you're usually our theme guy. You had a lot going on.
I had a lot going on. So you had the bulk of the work to do. So you got the theme, and I like it. I like the theme.
But you inspired me when you asked Fred Burton last week about America getting back in the game and how we can't be perceived as soft. And, you know, the terrorists only respond and speak one language, and that's strength, power, violence. So I thought of fighting fire with fire. How
very true.
Thomas Stansfield is actually putting the terrorists on their heels by taking this aggressive stance. There's a couple of scenes here where you hear, I think it's the Russians and maybe the Iranian and Islamic Jihad representatives like, that guy Stansfield don't mess around. America is going to be different this time. Now that we kidnapped 2 more of their people, they're not going to play games anymore. And I think talking to Fred Burton and so many other people, that's exactly what we needed. And an Orion team, right place, right time, Beirut in the early 90s, late 80s, is spot on. And I love that Vince was tuned into that and picked out, you know, fighting fire with fire as a theme of this book.
Right. And what's interesting to me is that there's even like a couple conversations between maybe I think it might be just the Russians where they're like, it can't be the Americans. The Americans aren't in it. Right. When the group like where you have
Fatah, the Palestinian.
Yeah, like Fatah
Syed.
and Radi and Syed and
yep.
Igmag Munia, like they're all talking
Right.
and they're like, yeah, the Americans aren't going to do anything. We can just do this. But yeah, no, like it's almost, I love, one thing I wanted to point out was it's kind of crazy when I looked back today or, you know, in the last couple of days putting together the notes, we only got up to chapter like 23 in our part 1. So we have, you know, from 23 to 66, 67, whatever, essentially 2/3 of the book left to cover. But I feel like it went so fast. It was very compact.
Oh, yeah.
And because we start off, it's like as soon as we're out of that training mode, out of Lake Anna, and right after Rapp's first kill, boom, we go into the second mission where they're trying to get the banker, and then boom,
Dorfman.
we get that. We're going to talk about that little chapter where he's like hunting down.
The guy in Geneva.
Yeah, Mitch goes on this side trip, and it's
his
like this kind of.
Right?
It's kind of like this weird, like, why is that chapter even needed? But it was so detailed, it was really cool.
Right.
And then we have the scene in Germany, a little prelude, and then a lot of action in Beirut, and it just the second 40 chapters or the last 40 chapters of this book felt like they read way faster than the first 20. They're both really exciting, but it's just like the pace of them was much different.
Right. I mean, we've talked about it on the podcast, how very often Vince's books are 2 books in one, and they complement each other so well. I think this one pulls that off better than most. You know, this
right.
The first half, like I'm almost disappointed. We are done with the training scene and the Lake.
You could have went longer with that. You could have totally went longer with it.
Like I'm disappointed it's gone, but it was so easy to savor in that I think 9 chapters back to back were at the same location with the same characters. So
I think that's why. I think that's a big reason.
Right. And I love that. And then it was kind of nice to go back to the Flynnianism of jumping between perspectives and trying to think, how are these all going to come together, and getting that kind of globe trotting, like you said, Geneva to Zurich to meet with the banker. We're coming from Istanbul and we're going to end up in Beirut. And I just really like that the book snapped into that. And it almost, each half complements itself perfectly, almost doing the opposite of what the other half was missing.
Right. Very true.
Well, this is how it kicks off. And it all comes back to the prelude. So seeing how Vince can tie it all together, the theme, fighting fire with fire, is also brought up because in the prelude, we're kind of dropped in that something's going to happen to Mitch. And so I also came up with that theme when Vince wrote, quote, "His captors had no idea of the true intent of the man they now had in their possession, and more importantly, no idea of the violence and mayhem he was about to visit upon them." That's the whole second half. The violence and mayhem Rapp and Hurley are going to bring down on this network of terrorists and Russians.
And I know we're probably going to talk at length on, I guess it's chapter 60 or whatever, where essentially we're seeing the prelude again, but now we get much more details. We know the whole backstory. And
I love that.
That's one of, like, I don't think Vince has done that very often, but doing that, I really enjoyed that. Just the perspective, you hook someone in the very first chapter. Right. What is this? And then you go back to it and you give us the full detail. And I don't know, brilliant writing right there.
You remember that line of 2 of his friends were captured. Both he trusted, but one he admired and one he hated his guts.
One he hated, yeah.
If you remembered that one line after the training at Lake Anna, there's such a payoff.
Right,
like,
exactly.
When you're like, oh, Rapp's going to go and have to get taken. Oh, wait, he's going to save 2 people. You know, that's Richards and that's Hurley, the one he hated for beating the living shit out of him in the middle of the night.
Right. All right, so we kick it off. I guess last time we talked about Rapp's first kill, and then there's a little bit of a fallout afterwards. I guess, you know, Rapp went a little bit rogue. I guess we touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to bring it up again here, is that the conversation with Stansfield that he has, where like Stansfield walks in and Mitch is just sitting there, probably drinking black coffee, reading a newspaper, and, you know, Mitch doesn't know who this guy is, and Stansfield is sort of eyeing him up and really wants to have that relationship with him. And I bring that up again here because that comes into play at the very last chapter, where, you know, Mitch is being a bodyguard, which we don't see Mitch being a bodyguard that often. And you begin to see this relationship that they really have. And it was unfortunate we don't get very much of Stansfield. I guess we get him in this book. We get him a little bit in the next book. Obviously, I think his main book is Term Limits, right? Which Mitch is not in. And then we get him a little in the first 2, and then he dies, I think, in between the third and the second and the third. So
third option, he was great in.
You begin to you realize how, like, the fruitfulness of their relationship. Right. In you know, when you look at both that chapter and then the very last chapter here, and you can see how it blossoms. And I just wanted to point that out because I thought, again, the Vince connecting these relationships, and that's why I think, like, sometimes you could probably go back and do an origin story and it not be fulfilling, you know, but here I really feel like, you know, Vince checks off all the boxes and does Mitch right, like sets everything up correctly. Like, I think looking at who Irene is, looking at who Stan Hurley is, looking at Stansfield, and seeing how Mitch begins all of these relationships are true to the rest of the books and how they were described previously.
Yeah. Vince is able to get so deep in so few words. He has great economy of words because it's a short conversation with Stansfield and Mitch, but you know Stansfield has his back. Stansfield's going to go into a room of not even just bickering, but full on almost at each other's throats, Hurley and Irene. Hurley wants to kick him out. Irene's kind of pissed that he broke protocol also. And Stansfield just kind of, his gravitas just closes the argument down. This kid's special. In 5 minutes of talking with him, I know he's the profile we need. We got to get in the game. Stansfield backs up Rapp. And I love this like mentor kind of role Stansfield plays. Stansfield really wants Rapp to know after his first kill of Sharif, he wants him to know, I was the judge and jury. You are only the executioner.
Mm.
And I wasn't sure why that's so important, but Vince's writing is so heavy there. And I think after Rapp's kill, Stansfield is trying to make sure Rapp's okay. And that Rapp knows, you know, all the weight of the world doesn't have to be on his shoulders. Sure, he pulled the trigger, 5 times? But that was a decision beyond just him. There are lots of other people involved. And so Stansfield is really taking care of Mitch, teaching him a lesson, and really showing, I'm going to have your back. Like, we don't just send you to do something and forget about you. Stansfield is saying, I'm the reason this happened, and, you know, I will be with you. And then at the end, like you said, he wants to prove that to him, and he says, you know, Mitch, I will go great lengths to get my guys back. Absolute great lengths. And the movie gave a nod to that. I'm kind of proud of the movie having the role of Ghost being left and Hurley not coming to save him, because Stansfield and ergo Vince made such an important link between our operatives knowing they're supported back home.
I think watching the movie in the middle of reading this book made me then think about the movie differently. Like, I appreciated some of the things that they actually did try to adapt correctly. I still give it a C-, but, you know, anyways, so.
Yeah, and I still give it a D+. Moving on.
All right, so we have Rapp's first kill, and then we quickly move to his second kill, or his second mission.
This Dorfman scene, yeah. And we were just talking about the fallout and the psychological effects. So, I mean, they go after the banker because Hurley's big plan is, if we steal the terrorist money and we know it's a joint bank account with the Russians, we'll get them to pop their heads up, right? They'll make some phone calls. They'll turn on each other.
Follow the money.
If these factions don't trust each other and are skeptical of each other, that's better for us, and they'll make mistakes. So they want to get this banker, and they go to Geneva. Rapp is thinking about how to get this guy to talk, because he notices there's not pictures of the guy's wife, who they tied up, and they're not going to hurt afterwards, but there's more pictures of his dog. And so when Hurley's interrogation is going nowhere, you know, the gun to the head, you know, pistol whip him, you scare the daylights out of him, and the guy's still not cracking and not going to give up all the bank accounts and the lock to the safe. Well, Rapp says, I'm going to go downstairs and grab the dogs. And Hurley gives him the leverage, gives him the space in the field to take the lead on the interrogation. I think that's big of Hurley to step back when his methods weren't working.
He could have easily been like, you know, like, shut up, kid. Like, I know what I'm doing here. But he let Rapp go, and Rapp was able to do it. Obviously, this Dorfman guy cared more about his dogs than his wife. So they got the information.
But here's the quote I started with. So Rapp threatens to torture one of these poodles in front of him, and the guy spills the beans, opens the safety deposit and the lockbox. But later that night, think of the psychology of Rapp after not a second kill, but a really, really like harsh interrogation. Rapp was dreaming of poodles, bad comb-over hairdos, and trussed-up plump German women. Then an expanding pool of blood under Dorfman's head. How far had it stretched, he wondered. Would it begin to dry in the arid winter air? How much blood was actually in a human head? 1 pint? Before he could decide, he drifted off.
Yes, but I will say I was glad that Mitch did not hurt the dog. Right. I don't think Mitch would have hurt the dog. He was always, stalling or, using it as a tactic.
Whatever it takes. Yeah, whatever it takes to get the job done. But he didn't want to actually hurt them.
I think Rapp's a dog lover. We know from his Shirley times, so.
Right. And then there's a long drive. I kind of like the bonding, and I guess you could say some monologues from Hurley as the trio of assassins is driving to Zurich to meet with the Ohlmeyers. I feel like Hurley is just he's taking us down memory lane here.
Yeah, we get a lot of just Hurley backstory and
right,
or just CIA backstory, whatever, missions of the past, which is kind of cool. I'm envisioning, because you obviously got Richards in the back or in the side, whatever. And it reminds me of like that scene from Captain America or one of the Avengers where you have Captain America, you have Falcon, and you have the Winter Soldier. And I feel like Captain America is Stan Hurley, and then you have Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Richards and Mitch Rapp. Yeah, so I don't know why that popped in my head during that time, but it did.
Yeah. And Hurley is still teaching lessons, though. So he's trying to get the kids, Rapp and Richards, to piece together, like, I've seen some shit in Beirut. There was, the bombing in 1983, the kidnapping of Bill Buckley in 1984, and then there was the U.S. shot down from the USS Vince Flynn in 1988, an Iranian plane, which led to them retaliating, we believe, possibly in bed with these Libyans to take down Pan Am and, the Lockerbie flight and all that. But he's also teaching him a lesson where he says, distance is your best friend and your greatest ally. Rapp says he had been taught by Hurley, your greatest ally after your number one objective after taking someone out is putting distance between you and the target. And so they already moved from Istanbul. Then they went to, where did they do the Dorfman hit? I think in Germany. In Germany. And now they're on their way to Zurich with bankers. So they're just all over the world. And I think that's something Hurley is also teaching them throughout this trip. Right. There's a lot of pedagogy between them in these scenes.
Yeah, no, and it's all happening very quickly, but I think like Mitch is picking it up pretty fast. You see how adaptable Mitch is. So
yeah,
and I think it adds plausibility to the mission that Mitch partakes in the second half at the very end. Like right. You think that he actually could do something like this, because I think without little things like these various operations that Mitch goes on, or these conversations, or even like the training scene, having just that ending like doesn't add any sort of credence to like thinking about, Mitch, that guy couldn't do that,
right?
It makes it way more believable.
We brought up a little bit of comedic relief. Well, Don reminds me in the chat here that moment
where he talks about
Hurley's giving an example about Sherman. Yeah. He's like, we got to be like Sherman, march to the sea, just burn everything in our wake, destroy this whole entire, blow the whole thing up, light it all on fire. And meanwhile, Richards is from Georgia, and Rapp's just laughing like, you just really gave a Sherman example in front of the pretty boy from Georgia. That's a good one.
That was funny.
Good catch. But we're on our way to the Ohlmeyers. I'm curious, Chris, what did you think about two things here? The utility, the actual reasons they're going to Zurich and meeting with Stan's old friends. And it's kind of, you get the feel off the books, like Irene and Stansfield are funding everything he's doing, but he's keeping him in the dark. So I want to know, how do you feel about the actual utility and the role the Ohlmeyers will play? And then how do you feel about, personally, how Rapp is going to take to the Ohlmeyer family? So both the work and the fun.
I think that this whole scene, these couple chapters where they're there, is supposed to set up two things. Like, all right, first, we have to think about it, right? I think Vince was trying to set up this trilogy prequel, right? Where you had American Assassin, Kill Shot, and book, unfortunately, we never got. Hopefully Kyle will get it. And so this is the first introduction of Mitch's, first love interest that we see after...
Maureen.
Mary, or as they call it, Mary/Maureen. We need to get IT on that to figure out,
I feel like we need Ryan's deck. I feel like Ryan would have the answer to this. Yeah. When we can get him, that's going to be one of my first questions for him.
Yeah. Is it Mary or is it Maureen?
Yeah.
But yeah, this was to set up his first love interest and take us down that road. And then the second thing is, it's kind of cool. So you remember you've seen Bourne Identity, right?
Right.
So there's those scenes where he goes to these safety deposit boxes and they're set up and stuff like that. And this was kind of cool because it gave us a peek behind like the setting up of that and like how people think, how these spies, sometimes the spycraft in these books is not the focus. It's more so operational, going in and taking out people, I guess that way. But then here we get a peek at like how good of a spy Mitch will eventually become.
Right.
Not just an operative, And
because Hurley teaches him.
Because Hurley teaches him. And,
Hurley's like, I don't want to know. Like, you have a couple identities. How good's your French? How good's your Italian?
Yep.
My German's not so good, so here he has to memorize these three things.
Drop boxes in all these cities.
Right. And, there's this amount of cash. You set it up with other things, which I'm assuming he means guns and ammunition, whatever. But it was kind of cool because it was a peek behind the curtain of some of these things we see in other novels that these spies have already set up.
Right. And speaking of the drop boxes and this network, that's going to pay off when we get to the end scene with the man who put the suitcases with the guns in the hotel rooms, Rob Ridley. So I'm really excited to get there towards the end as well. But yeah, we see this whole network coming together that I think also speaks to the importance of the actual individuals. The CIA and the work they're doing is not just this bureaucratic behemoth with paperwork. I'm sure, that's 95% of it. But the effective part is guys like Hurley, even at their age, staying in the game, keeping their connections. Ohlmeyer is never going to be someone officially on the CIA books who everything he does is documented. But he's getting the guys in the field the paperwork. He's getting them the insurance policies. He's giving them safe harbor, in the different towns where his children live. And these are like the only people the operatives can call in the field when shit goes south. Like even when your own government can't protect you. And I really like the idea that Hurley brings that to the table instead of some official CIA pipeline that's like, here's the number you call if you're ever in trouble. No, like you call Hurley's buddy, who was this dude who grew up behind the Iron Curtain and went to college in East Berlin and realized, fuck the communists, I'm going to work with the Americans. And so, like, Ohlmeyer's motivations here are so... It's a minor character, right?
Very
Doesn't
minor.
come up all that much. His banking network, I think, is referenced at other times throughout the books. But Vince still gives such a backstory on him. He went to Humboldt University in East Berlin. He fled to the West after realizing, communism is all bullshit. He hated living under a communist regime. And Ohlmeyer even has religious motivations, where Vince quotes Luke 12:28, "For those to whom much is given, much is required." Ohlmeyer saw communism for the sham that it was, a bunch of brutes who seized power in the name of the people, only to repress the very people they had claimed to champion. In that one quote, he just built out a whole character that I totally jive with, even if we don't see him that much again. Like, that's a persona to me that withstands the test of time, and Vince just brought that into his books with a couple of chapters.
Yep. Well, so what's your perception of his granddaughter, Greta?
Okay. I
we
really
have one
enjoyed...
listener here who said they never really cared about her because she's not mentioned much. I think she plays a small role in Kill Shot, right?
Right.
But then she's literally never mentioned again. Whereas like Donatella is mentioned, that
she comes
back. She comes back and back and back, and obviously we have Anna and Claudia and whatever. But Kyla's never even like thought to mention this girl.
I think one could criticize this as a discontinuity, right?
Sure.
What happens between Kill Shot and Transfer of Power, where Greta is out of the picture, never mentioned again, and then there's this Anna character. Okay, that's a shift. But we know Vince probably would have told that story if given, the time to do so. And there's still opportunities to tell that story. Fans clamor for the Kill Shot to Transfer of Power gap being filled in. So I don't see that as a discontinuity that's going to bother me or that makes me think less of the series. I see it more as an opportunity that was missed, unfortunately, due to the circumstances that happened, but also an opportunity to come. And I think, looking at the psychology of these operatives, I think there's a possibility of having something so deep happen to Rapp that he 100% represses it. And then later on in his life, almost his like transitioning out phase of life, some doc, like a Doc Lewis, is able to bring that out of the depths of the recesses. I think there is good storytelling that can say why her character is so hidden it would never come up in any aspect of his life. Like he wanted to protect her or something. Like he knew keeping her in his life and ever having contact with her again would put her in jeopardy. Now that his name is out there, and he officially works for the CIA. So I think you could pull it off. I think it's an opportunity.
You could. Almost like Ethan Hunt's wife in Mission Impossible, where like she gets married in the third one, and then he like has to step away, you know. And I think eventually she comes back like 7 movies later or whatever. But you know, that's a plot you could use.
Yeah.
But Kyle has to do this. Like,
right?
Who can we call? I don't know. Who do we need to call? Not David. Someone at Simon and Schuster. It's probably like someone in the Flynn family that doesn't want him to finish it. I don't know.
It for Kyle. I mean, just think you can do. We've talked about it before. Kennedy's father. You can do Stansfield. You can do Hurley. All of those characters working together, like our Maslick, our Coleman. You know, all of them working together just in a novel would be absolutely fascinating.
Got it.
But another side of what I like that Greta brings. We see everything Rapp went through in the training. We see him going through this transition, and it's almost too easy. Like, that's what made Stansfield nervous and Doc Lewis a little apprehensive. How is Rapp going to do after his first kill? How is Rapp going to do out in the field with so little training, comparatively speaking? I think the Greta scene shows he's still a kid. Like,
right. He's fumbling, like, with how he gets, like, butterflies.
He gets a butterfly. He gives up his name. Like, he says Mitch instead of Mike Cruz.
It's a little Mike bit Cruz out of character, a little bit, but, you know.
He's usually Mitch Cruz in Transfer Power and beyond. But here he's going with Mike Cruz. I wonder where that... Anyway, maybe because he gives up to Greta that he's Mitch Cruz. And so now Mitch is out there. And I think he says Rapp at one point even. So anyway, I like that he's fumbling. It shows this transition to Assassin is not 100% done and dusted. You know, he's a professional, yes, but something like love, he could fall, and Greta is the one to bring that out in him, and Greta's grandmother. Couple of wisecracks about how if Greta doesn't sleep with him, she's going to.
She will. That was funny.
I like it. A little levity.
All right, so right after this, they're supposed to go on this mission, right? But Irene wants to send Mitch on a little side mission before they eventually meet up in Beirut, because the goal is to get them to Beirut. They've taken the money, they've traced a little bit, they've figured out some different things. We don't have Marcus yet, right? So obviously someone else has figured this out.
Well, the phone calls.
Right, it's the phone calls.
Did you think of that did you see the news article about the FBI sting? Was it a few weeks ago?
No.
Dude, it was the massive organized crime bust in history. The FBI and like 9 other countries and organizations, I think arrested something like 900 people, like literally overnight. Look at how they did it. They planted bugged cell phones in these networks by pretending it's an encrypted system. You have to have one of these phones, which you had to get from another guy you trust who made the phone, because it's 100% encrypted. And they had organized crime rings across continents. I think Sweden was in it. Australia was in it. They literally made the devices, convinced all these drug lords and different organized crime bosses that they were 100% encrypted. And it was literally the FBI listening to every single device. Oh, it was called like the Anam app or something. And like, it was the biggest like organized crime takedown in history. And it just makes me think here how many times Irene mentions, I can't tell you it's classified, but this intel is secure. And Rapp figures out, oh, Sharif was on the phone. We must have been listening to that phone call. And later on, he says something like, you got that by listening to the phone calls? And she's like, we can't tell you that.
Right.
But it just
They're
made me
always
think
listening.
Of that recent story.
They're always listening.
Dude, look it up. Look it up. The story was freaking mind-boggling.
I'll know not to download that app next time I'm planning my Revenge of the World, you know.
Sorry, I threw you off.
It's okay. We were talking about this mission that Irene wants to send him on, which kind of, it's a very interesting how this sort of filler chapter. I guess the purpose of it, right, is to split Mitch and Hurley up, so that way Hurley and Richards can get taken, or else it doesn't, you know, the rest of the plot doesn't make sense. Right. But this little 2-chapter scene where Mitch has to go kill this guy, I don't know, it was super
pretty
detailed,
cool.
And it obviously is very similar to other different operation based chapters we've gotten from Vince, but I don't know, I just really enjoyed it.
Right. I was going to have the same critique. I was like, oh, the prelude says 2 guys get taken. 1 goes in to save them. Okay. Hurley and Richards got to get taken. And Rapp's got to be somewhere else.
Exactly,
so it's like, it's a little bit of a red herring. And I was like, who's this Ismail guy? We have intelligence, something with the Libyans. Kind of cool the Libyans were brought in, because it turns out there is evidence pointing to their involvement in Pan Am Lockerbie and possibly other kidnappings in Beirut. So I thought that was a good connection. But then the scene was just so freaking awesome. I didn't care. I stopped critiquing. And I could critique. I stopped critiquing because you got Rapp running from this Ismail guy. He was about to kill him. He saw him early. Rapp takes cover because Hurley told him, in a gunfight, you either keep moving and advancing, or you just take cover and count the bullets. And so Rapp said, I'm going to take cover and count the bullets. And then later on, after a chase, he hid behind a Mercedes, and he was trying to figure out what caliber bullet they were, whether or not they bounced off the Mercedes, or if they penetrated the interior and deflected. Right. And by the sounds of the bullet, he knew the size of the magazine, because this caliber would have this many shots. If it pierced the side of the Mercedes, it would be a bigger caliber, so there's less bullets in the magazine. And I was just like freaking loving every minute of it. I didn't care about any sort of, break in the storyline, the plot line, in terms of why is he here? What's he doing? It was awesome. And then the guy, Ismail, takes this lady.
Takes a hostage. Yeah.
And Rapp's like, wait, if he had bullets, he would have just shot me. There's no reason for him to hide behind this lady. If he's pausing and not shooting at me, he's out of bullets. And so Rapp knows he can advance. And as he advances, he trips over the dog and Rapp gets the upper hand. Yeah, it's just awesome.
It's a really good chapter. And then also we get, right after that, we get, Rapp runs away, but then comes back to the scene to make it, to sort of, why does he come back to the scene? Make the scene
he's just a guy walking around.
He's just a guy walking by.
He's like, oh.
Then he knows where to throw his gun, and then we see, very similar to the third option, how he's able to process getting out of town. And
I love this.
Yeah, getting to the border, and then taking a train, and then driving or flying, whatever.
Yep.
And I love the scene where he's driving, and he's listening to it really dates this book.
Eurotrash.
Eurotrash. He's listening to
Let's see when that album came out.
And
I guess 89 or 90, because that's right when this is.
And he gives it to that one guy at the
border guard.
At the border guard of Beirut. That was a nice little touch. But
that's right. Although we get a little glimpse into what Rapp would have rather been listening to.
Yes.
I think we need a Rapp playlist, because he says, I bought the Eurotrash for my cover, so I can impress the border guards, because I knew they'd be, teenagers with the pop music. But he wanted to listen to some U2 and Bob Seger.
He did.
I'm down. That would seem a little strange driving through the Swiss, I guess. Which border is he going to? France? But
yeah.
Speaking of music,
Bob Seger.
Kyle picked up on the music train to help us out with the Rapp playlist. Bruce came up twice in the last 2 books.
He did.
Rapp was playing a Bruce song when he stole the truck with the drug cartel and Lethal Agent. And then at his own house in Manassas, when Scott takes, what's the girl's name in Total Power?
Sonia.
When Scott takes Sonia home, he turns on Rapp's stereo system, and I think it's also playing Bruce.
Right.
So
Mitch is a Bruce fan. He's a Boss fan.
# Rapp playlist. If you have any songs to add, U2, Bob Seger, and Bruce Springsteen to the Rapp playlist.
That's the vibe we're going for. So.
All right, guys. Really hope that you enjoyed Chris and my discussion live about American Assassin, the start of the second half. However, we went rather long, so we are going to split this into 2 45-minute episodes and bring you our ending of the book, our discussion on the ending of the book, and our cover discussion, along with our final ratings and final reviews. Wait for it. It's going to be good. We'll bring that to you next week, but we want to thank everybody who joined us live. It was a blast, and we look forward to doing it again real soon.
Back in Beirut, right? They Stan and Richards meet up with some Armenians. They get them into this safe house. We get this interesting scene where I guess Hurley is looking at where the embassy used to be, or near where the embassy was bombed, and like you mentioned before, we get a lot of introspection from, or even like extrospection from Hurley learning about his past. And this is almost like a Stan Hurley book.
Absolutely.
It really could be a Stan Hurley book. I mean,
Absolutely.
Mitch Rapp is the main character, but it's also a Stan Hurley book.
And it's the transition. It's him teaching and bequeathing the lessons and the skills to the next generation. Right. I love the story when we hear we're going to have to do a podcast of just everything Stan Hurley, just all these little snippets and backstory. Like maybe if Kyle does write an earlier book in this time period, we got to do a podcast where we give little snippets of what we've heard so far about Hurley. For example, with the embassy bombing, he was supposed to be there because there was a meeting of the CIA.
He was
top
having
brass,
sex.
and he was out. But it was some crazy thing. Like
he was at a mission. Then he had he had to go back.
The informant wanted to pay him and impress him, so he got him these two women, and so he went with them, completely blowing off this really important CIA meeting. Well, anyway, that's the reason he survived and wasn't at the blast. But
Stan's sex life saved his life.
Every one of these little snippets, I loved it. I ate it up.
And it's a little graphic, but like the whole stuff that he talks about with Roddy in the second part about his mom. He like won't let it up. And even as a reader, you're thinking like,
it's too much.
Wait, is he actually telling the truth, or is
did he sleep with his mom?
Did he sleep with his mom, or
I don't
is it
put
just
it
a
past
bit?
him.
I don't know, and I think even like one of like even maybe Syed's like maybe he's telling the truth.
Yeah, he questions himself. We got to get to that interrogation though, because as graphic as it is what Hurley's doing, and we've had some comments already talking about the infamous ear scene, biting off the ear,
a little Mike Tyson action.
What he's doing, the shtick, is perfect because Hurley knows how these things go down. Once you're taken, he knows what these motherfuckers are capable of, right?
Right.
Like,
right.
And no one knows.
His job
more
is
than
to
him.
Piss them off and get them to kill him, essentially.
Right. He's got to either piss them off so much that they kill him, or he's got to sow so much dissent between the factions and giving so many lies that he's not worth a damn. Because, you're only worth the intelligence they can get out of you. And he knows he'll break eventually. But before he breaks, if he can just completely screw them up with different stories and false intelligence and mix it in, he knows he'll get the upper hand. And he's really good at pissing off Syed and Roddy, and they're going at each other. Roddy wants to kill him. Syed tells him not to. He won't tell him his name. He
William
pulled a Jack
Tecumseh Sherman.
And he pulled a Jack me off.
And Syed's like, really?
I haven't heard that one since like 2005.
High school.
Yeah, even earlier. Oh, it's so funny. I mean, the Taken bit, though, was that a little anticlimactic for you? Hurley and Richards at this hotel. He walks out, smokes a cig. He's going to go to like a convenience store. He's like, I can go left or right. Guess it doesn't matter. Turns left and is in some neighborhood. He notices some cars that weren't there the night before. And then the police just crash on him. I was like, well, that's how Hurley gets taken.
So I think the one guy, what is it, Prigozhin or
Petroj? Oh, Ridley's friend. Yeah, Ridley's friend.
The Armenian, right?
True.
He was like, wait, why? And it's interesting because I think even maybe this is we're catching something here, but Vince mentions that they get brought in by Armenians, but it's obviously not Petrosian because later on in the chapter, he's like, why didn't Stan come to me? Like I would have protected him or whatever. Yeah. So it's a different group of Armenians, I guess. Or
I think they're doing it for money. I think at one point Ridley says the police shouldn't have done that. Petrosian knows those police are good, but he also knows they'll turn to the highest bidder.
Sure.
So I can send Petrosian in and get the police back on our side, who can then help us go find him. And I guess it's just the local authorities are that willing to switch on a dime.
But it's probably a little bit of cockiness by Stan. This is Stan's territory. He was stationed here for a very long time. He thinks he can come back in, and it's like
thinks
old
the
times.
Game's the same.
Thinks the game's the same, and it's obviously not. People spotted him at the airport. They let obviously you have Syed, you have Islamic Jihad, you have Fatah, all like waiting to get you.
Yep.
And he should have been more careful. He slipped up. He should have been more careful.
And that's kind of like we were talking with Fred with William F. Buckley. Like, we couldn't believe the station chief just lived off complex and walked the city and went to play tennis and whatever. And I guess that's kind of reminiscent of what Hurley's doing here. He's just out going to a convenience store without realizing the terrorists are reading our weakness and getting even more aggressive.
Maybe Hurley thinks that no one would ever be smart enough, dumb enough to take Stan Hurley or Bill Sherman as they know him, right? So
yeah, no, that's true.
Back in the day, no one would have dared touch Bill Sherman. So
no, you're right.
But the game has changed, and maybe Hurley doesn't realize how much it has changed.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Before we move on, I see it in the chat. I got to read the quote about biting the ear. We just need an example of the kind of shit Hurley is pulling here, right? Like, this is legendary. Roddy's mom's the prostitute, not stopping about it, saying his name to jack me off, Ulysses S. Grant, William Tecumseh Sherman. And then he goes so far as to really want to piss these guys off. Quote, Hurley unleashed a gob of blood and the one busted tooth from his mouth. The bulk of it hit Roddy in the face. With his arms tied behind his back and his legs taped to the chair, Hurley started bouncing the chair an inch at a time towards the two men, snapping his teeth and barking like a dog. The movie did that well, at least.
Well, I was going to bring that up because I think we've said this before, but Michael Keaton was a great casting for Stan Hurley. And that whole scene where Ghost is doing that interrogation and immediately he starts off from the bat like being like, yeah, let's go. Like, come on, give it to me.
Yep.
And like that's exactly word from word, like from the chapter.
From the book. Yep.
And when he starts pulling off the fingernails, and he's like, "Oh, that felt good," I'm like,
round two.
Michael Keaton did a great job expressing that, and I really think he captured at least Hurley from the pages what I saw or read. So
that one scene and Michael Keaton just being that crazy wily bastard during the interrogation was the closest to the book I think you got. And you kept the ear scene. Like, that's one thing. Out of all the things they decided to keep,
they kept the ear scene.
They kept that. At least it's something.
They kept the ear scene.
Yeah. Should we talk, just to wrap it up, about the bad guys? Although I'm going to be honest, in my winners and losers, that will probably, at least the Russian side of things, be one of my few losers of the book. But I feel like we should just wrap it up with, like, we know the Russians and the Iranians had a role in Beirut and the Middle East at this time. And I think Vince is trying to explore how the director of the SVR, and actually I believe Directorate S, who is the actual program of the illegals and the undercover operatives on the ground. So the director of that program is financially supporting Fatah, the Palestinian organization, Islamic Jihad, and all these other groups through a joint bank account. And therefore Ivanov's got to get in the game. And when that money is taken, and when he hears there's American agents in captivity, he needs to one-up Islamic Jihad and, pull his power card and go in there and get those guys and get his money back. What do you think of the Russian involvement here?
Yeah, we're almost an hour into this podcast. We're just not bringing up the villains.
And we got to get to the covers. Don't forget the covers.
Yeah, I think that it doesn't. I don't know, the villains here, you could replace them with anybody. They're not, I don't know. They were okay. I like the Syed character. He was interesting, and learning about him and like the whole Syrian aspect to it. But yeah, like the whole Russian subplot, it was almost not needed. It just added this extra element to it. I guess it was more so to, like you said, to show what was actually going on in that time, in that region. But yeah, I think, they're definitely the losers for me for this book.
Right.
My Mac's gonna die, so I'm just gonna plug it in. But I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess one last thing though on the terrorist, when you're talking about it, I really like the dynamics of the Middle Eastern group with the Palestinians, the Syrians. It was the Russian subplot I didn't like. And another thing I like about that is Imad Mughniya. And I had no idea Imad Mughniya was one of the world's most wanted terrorists at the time. And he was directly responsible for a lot of the kidnappings and probably a lot of the bombings. And all that just made me appreciate more what Vince was doing there. Also disappointing that the Russians didn't have that level of exposition and explanation of their backgrounds. But when Fred told us Imad Mughniya was one of the actual main names they were after, or the most wanted, oh boy.
Sorry.
When the kids come down, decide to have a midnight party in the laundry room there. No, but Fred gave us the wanted poster for the real Mughniya. And so just that level of detail that Vince is bringing, real characters, real history, real personalities, and capturing them in fiction, I think is awesome. And the wanted poster was just a shock to me that we were tracking these guys. We had the Rewards for Justice program willing to pay upwards of multiple millions of dollars for tips that would lead to their capture. And I think that was really great. One other way, though, the real life is brought into this is Rob Ridley, which a few weeks ago, Rob Richer told us is his character. And so I can't help but think a lot of this. All right. You're all charged up here?
Yeah.
I can't help but think a lot of the conversations Ridley has up on this hill overlooking Beirut are real things that Rob Richer would have told Vince about. Did you get that feeling?
Yeah. And I love this. Again, this is a character we see a lot. We've seen a lot in like the most recent books preceding American Assassin. And then we're going to see him again in the future. But it's cool, like, seeing this guy he's only been stationed there, 5-7 years? So he's pretty early in his game. And he's, I don't know, he's wearing like a UPS outfit. He's the guy who like bring. Although Vince doesn't say UPS, but yeah, and he's the guy who like leaves the packages. But we get all this cool information about like the Marines who would set up shop as snipers and shoot down the green line in order to like tell people back off. Yeah, no, that's definitely, I could see that as information that maybe Vince had learned from Rob Richer. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Like the Americans were getting picked off, and they called in this set of Marine snipers, and within like 5 days they racked up like 30 kills. And they stopped getting shot at. Like, that was it. Right. They went back to hide in their caves. They were good to go.
Yeah. So Ridley's the one who's going to mastermind Rapp's final mission, right? To save Hurley here. And Ridley is even telling him, like, you're freaking nuts. Like, you should not cross that line. The second you go over there, you're going to be captured. Ridley's just confused. And Rapp says, I have to do this, right? I have to go. And the one thing Ridley can offer is the relationships. And I think Rob Richer must have told Vince about this, why we have the Petrosian character. Like, Ridley has to have somebody on the other side with influence and sway, and know the authorities and the different power dynamics, or else Rapp would have no chance over there. So Ridley tells him like where to go. This Petrosian guy gets the cops to stay out of the way and let him cross. And then when Rapp gets there, he has a radio, and he's able to tip off, I guess it was like a street vendor who's selling like spare parts. And the street vendor passes on that he heard word of an American being kept in a basement at Martyr Square. And so Rapp is able to radio that back to Ridley, and that's right when he gets taken. So I like this network of relationships supporting Rapp in what he's about to do. And that's how Ridley got the intel where Hurley's going to be held.
And I like the like Mitch plays it like a dumb,
right.
He's a dumb. He's not obviously not an operative, not a trained operative. So
his son.
They're not. Yeah,
he's saying he's there because he's his son.
Eventually, but in the beginning, like he's a normal operative wouldn't go around saying, I'm looking for Syed, I'm looking for Americans, and he telling everybody.
I think he had a map.
With a map, like waving American money, that's not how you do it. That's exactly how you get taken.
Right.
And obviously these guys are like, oh, he's an idiot. So they completely underestimate him.
Exactly.
And then as soon as Roddy finds out or thinks that it's his son, that's like the ultimate nail in the coffin. So
because the terrorist would be like, why would you ever come here? It's a death sentence. Rapp plays his cards perfectly because the only reason an untrained kind of dumbfounded kid would go in there is if it's his dad, right? If it's a family member, you have to go. And so the terrorists buy it, hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
Which is kind of what Rapp was doing at the training scene by not revealing his full athletic potential.
Exactly.
When he's running, he's holding back so people underestimate him so that he can have the upper hand. And man, just Vince nails it then, nails it here. It all comes together.
It does. What do you think? I guess the very last thing we have here is the scene where Rapp comes in and says, "Dad, I'm gonna get you out of here." And then you see this calculation, like immediately Hurley realizes what Rapp's doing.
Right.
Rapp is tracking the gun, is able to get the gun. Hurley springs into action. Oh, I guess first. So they put a blade in his scalp or in his hair? In his hair.
I think he weaved. Rapp's always had somewhat long hair. I think he weaved it in, so when his hands were behind his head, he can get the razor blade. But he doesn't even use it to cut. He tries to cut the duct tape on his wrists. He couldn't even cut it the full way. He thought he'd be able to. So with his hands duct taped together, he still grabs the gun by the nozzle and is able to flip it up with duct taped hands, in the air, catch it with the handle and trigger so that he can use it. That was pretty badass.
That was a pretty cool scene.
Yeah. And then I think it's Hurley who's like, "Hey kid, give me the gun. You take the knife." And Rapp's like, "Hell no, this is my gun." And Hurley realizes, fine. I feel like Hurley's growing as well throughout this book in really big ways. And it's not just Rapp being turned into an assassin. It's Hurley becoming a better teacher.
Yeah, I think Hurley begins to realize in the beginning he didn't want to believe in Mitch's potential because he didn't find Mitch, and Mitch is not he's not a Navy SEAL. He's not a Marine. He's not an Army Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's used to following orders.
Right.
And that's what Hurley's been trying to groom, and unsuccessfully, I'll say that. But he's realizing that, this guy actually, there's that scene where he asks him, why did you kill Syed? And then, that was everything you did great, except for the fact that he quickly, he gives him a small little rebuke, but then he's like, all right, you shouldn't have sat down next to him, don't make it personal, right? So quickly, I'm sure it's a little bit judgy, but he's also training. And then you see this progression more and more and more where he's no longer being mean. There's always going to be those Hurleyisms to it, right? But he is truly trying to train this kid and help him survive because he sees that this guy has the potential to be the next me, be better than me. So
right. And he's coming to grips with that.
Exactly.
And Irene, the little girl he raised, he has to stop seeing as just a little girl and being the full-grown woman and boss. She's his boss, essentially, and he's got to come to terms with that. And I think we see his arc in this book. It's like one of the comm majors said on our movie review, this very well could have been a Stan Hurley movie, and this book very much was a Stan Hurley book and the arc that he's on. And I freaking loved it. It gets me hyped for Killshot. I want the Ohlmeyers back. I want more Greta. I want more Hurley. Let's keep the train going. And so Killshot is a coming.
Yes, it is. Well, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, at the very end, Mitch has this plot to sort of, have the two factions in the square fight against each other.
Right.
Causes a distraction,
Chaos.
allows him to get out of there.
Steals the car. And he intercepts the Russian.
Right.
The assistant.
The assistant. Yeah. And that's what leads to we already talked about it, but the very final chapter where Stansfield's able to get back his man by trading information and money. Not the Russian, because the Russian is a defector.
Gonna keep
now,
him,
but
yeah,
gonna keep him.
He wants to stay,
but yeah, I guess we mentioned a little bit of the losers, but like I don't know. I feel like Vince does sometimes. We mentioned this a couple times. Like finishing some books, like the climaxes are always great, but then like the chapters after that are sometimes a little bit disappointing. Like, I mean, I guess I always want more, right? So,
right. Getting
out of that, once they got free, I would have liked more seeing getting out of there.
Yeah.
But it was good. This is a bad example of it because I still think it was good. But yeah,
I agree. It was almost Transfer of Power-esque in the ending of
right.
They hit the White House, they free the hostages, and it's like
boom, they're done. They're in the building next door.
Yeah, I just remember you didn't get that scene fully. Same thing here. I wanted Rapp and Hurley. The whole book was about after a kill, the fallout after the kill. And I feel like here I wanted a little more of the fallout after the escape.
Right.
Rendezvousing with Ridley, who was able to use local context and maybe something like the UPS uniforms again to kind of sneak out, or they have to establish contact with Irene and let them know they have this Russian guy who was involved, and so they could put pressure on the State Department and go that route. And we didn't really explore it. There was an epilogue, small little chat about it, but they just kind of got out, took the car, and were like, peace, we're good. I really want to know what they put on the radio. Like U2? Bob Seger?
I always want... And to think about it, this is kind of a short book. Like
It was actually.
In, 66 chapters, like...
Yeah.
Definitely not the longest, so...
On the shorter side, probably. So
yeah. But
we always want more. We're always greedy.
Very, very good book.
All right, but the winner's Hurley. Come on.
Oh,
man.
for sure. No, I can't even argue with you. The winner is
100%.
definitely Hurley.
And that might be like the biggest winner we've had on any list of our winners and losers. Hurley is such a big winner. He's such a big winner. It catapults this book. I'm going to say, Chris, into the top 5.
Ooh, okay.
Into the top 5. That's how much I like the Hurley arc.
What I let you do the notes for the discussion thread for this one. You left out our ratings and rankings.
I left out the ratings. I kind of wanted it to be a little bit of a surprise here for each other.
Surprise. Okay. All right. So, what are you giving this?
Memorial Day still on top. Transfer of Power still up there. I'm put in the top 5. I'm not sure if it's 3, 4, or 5. I'd have to think about that more, but it is easily an A. I mean, I know I think Memorial Day an A- because we were doing some of the other things. I don't like the system we've done. I feel like we need to rejudge and recurve our system here. So I'm giving this an A. It's not the number 1 spot, but I have to give it an A. Everything is so well done. The tiny minor foibles I have with the Russian subplot, fine. The little trip to Geneva was so well done, I didn't care that it was a distraction from the main plot. Another little tiny critique, where did Doc Lewis go in the second half? I would have liked a small role for him.
And we don't see him much in the rest of the series, which is kind of upsetting.
No. Yeah, we don't see him much. So I felt like that was such a great character the first half, but he fell out. Same way Ridley was such a great character in the second half, but he didn't come back. Greta, as we've already said, does not play a major role beyond this book in Killshot. She was like a side story. I would hope those were explored or weaved in a little more. If the book had a little more meat to it, would have been nice. But I'm giving it an A. I still like Memorial Day better as a book, but I'm going 9.5.
Wow. So one of our listeners right now posted their top 6, with American Assassin being 6. I
put it above Extreme Measures.
It's above Extreme Measures.
Lethal Agent.
It's
above Lethal Agent.
It's below Memorial Day and Consent to Kill. I love both those books. I really like Lethal Agent. That's probably like Kyle's best book.
I think it's Kyle's best, but I would still put American Assassin higher.
Transfer of Power 2 is really good. I think, but this book might be above Transfer of Power.
Well, this book is absolutely a better written book than Transfer of Power.
Well, but that's Vince's second or first Mitch book, right? So
Right. This is a better written book. I still think Transfer of Power is higher on my rankings. You know, I like nostalgia, and that one is just a classic and an OG. So, might be higher, but I will say American Assassin, I think, is the better written book. All right, you got to tell us your numbers and your letters.
Oh, well, so I'm a stickler for rules. So we set up the situation. So I have to give it around what I gave Memorial Day, which was like an A-, which is I feel bad giving this book an A-, but actually, you know what? Screw it. I'm giving it an A.
Yes.
And it's a 9.5.
Yes.
It's a 9.5.
Let's go. Forget our earlier ratings. We can't play this game trying to judge it with the curve of what we did in the past. Let's give it its due, and this one deserves a 9.5.
It's
probably
a 9.5.
Means if we go back, I would give Memorial Day a 9.8, to be honest. But
yeah, to be honest, yeah.
This deserves an A, 9.5. I would probably give Transfer of Power an A-, 9.4, 9.3, but this one deserves it. But you know what might not deserve a lot of praise?
What is that?
I think you could see it on your screen right here. And I think it's not the first, not the second, but I think it just might be the third one you see on that little image.
The dreaded cover C. This may be the worst cover C ever.
Maybe? Did you say maybe? You say maybe?
Yeah, maybe.
This is 100%, hands down, the absolute worst cover of any book that has ever been published and gone to print. Chris, you got to look in your phone. Do you remember that text I sent you?
Oh, yeah.
I actually put it in the notes. I think I put
have
it in the notes.
Yeah, you put it in the notes so I could read it. Let me just read it. All of a sudden, I'm at work. Mike texts me. Let me just read you his stream of consciousness text.
This
right
was the moment I first saw cover C. Never in my life I've seen it. This was my first reaction.
Mike is the one who puts together these beautiful, I have to say, they're beautiful little cover panels. And for American Assassin, there was a lot. We went up all the way to cover S. So Mike just texts me. He says, "Oh my goodness. Oh my. No. Absolutely not. Holy shit. I can't. No. I can't. This is not fair. Please, please, please tell me this cannot be true. I'm literally crying right now. And I don't know whether it's from tears or laughter. Probably a bit of both. But seriously, this is affecting me on a large scale. I need to talk to a shrink like Doc Lewis. I'm not fucking around. I feel soulless. This is what despair feels like. This is an abomination of all that is good and holy." He says this book is permanently banned from our Museum of Flynn, aka the Flynnseum. I just get these like texts one after another, and I'm just like, I'm sitting there doing some experiments, and I go back and I look at all these texts, and I was just like, where are you getting to? And then finally you said cover C.
That was a real text. I had a moment of just crisis and despair. I was drifting. I was just drifting. I couldn't pull myself
So I guess
together.
this is the origin of the power lines.
There are like 18 different power lines? Like,
I guess we should comment here because this is also going to be a podcast in audio format. But yeah, so cover C is just a man and a lot of power lines.
they double down on the power lines, man. They double down.
That whole line just makes me so depressed. Like, literally, someone who never read a single, like,
he's got a trench coat in the desert.
Why?
You tell me, Chris, would you see rolling deserts and wear a trench coat in Zurich? In Geneva?
No.
Downtown Beirut?
No.
Downtown Istanbul?
No.
What? All right, but there is sun. It is sunny out. The sun is reflecting off the roads. Right. The sun is reflecting off the power lines. Why is he wearing a trench coat with his head? And who is he? Who's wearing a trench coat? I keep saying he is wearing a trench coat. Who is it? That could be a she. They are wearing a trench coat. I'm done. I'm absolutely done.
I agree. This one of our Fred said, "We need Fred Burton to come back and hunt down the guy who appeared on all the cover C's. We need to get like what's the program Fred runs? The
Rewards for Justice.
Yeah, we need some rewards. 20 mil for 40 mil.
Double that.
Whichever analyst or not analyst, marketing agent, designer thought
approved that.
It was
Who approved it?
I guess the Flynn family must have approved it.
Really, I don't think they go that far into every single cover line.
You know, I bet you cover C came out in the in-between. In the in-between. I bet you that book series was published when Vince wasn't alive and when Kyle hadn't started yet.
I don't want to talk about it. I really don't. I have PTSD from it. I really do.
Let's get to some ones we liked. Okay, we talked about the ones we don't like. It's always cover C, but let's get to some ones we actually enjoy.
So we've got the classics. A and E are both similar covers. A is the classic red and black with a silver star, and E is the same exact scheme with a star on this kind of like gritty wall. It looks like a metallic surface. So
could be the room that Stan Hurley is captured in.
Ooh, I like that. Very well could be. And the star could be the stars on the wall at the CIA. And right. I like to think
that's what I always imagine them as, the silver stars that they have at the CIA.
Right.
I don't know. I really enjoy the simple covers that they have for A, D, and E.
I think though it might be, or the intentionality might have been William F. Buckley's star. How heavy an influence his story and his sacrifice played on who Hurley is and what he's been through, who Stansfield is, who Rob Ridley is. I feel like this whole book could be a nod to Bill Buckley, and I love seeing that star on the cover. You don't need anything more. It's a great tribute.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's just do a couple more, and then what do you think? Because we have, 20-something covers? How about we do a wrap-on-wrap episode for our patrons where we break down the rest of the covers? But, Chris, before we do that, so we'll stay on afterwards. We'll do a full cover breakdown. You guys are welcome to stay, and then we'll also release that for our patrons later on as a special patron-only episode. But if you were to pick maybe 3 covers to review, which one's your gold, your silver, and your bronze? Because we have a follower, Jared McCarran, who thought, why don't you guys do gold, silver, and bronze for your top 3 covers each book?
That's a good idea.
Shout out to him. You could follow him at Jared, MACARIN on Twitter. Thanks for the idea. So, Chris, if you were to pick 3, give us your gold, silver, bronze.
All right, so I really like D, which is like the columns. I'm guessing that's one of the memorials. The Lincoln, I guess. That would be the Lincoln Memorial with the star. So my gold would have to be E, which is like what we said, that the gray wall background could be a prison, could be something with the solo star. My silver would be A, which is the silver star. What is that, a background of DC? The Capitol building? I can't really see it.
Possibly Jefferson, if we zoom in.
Jefferson?
That's the Jefferson. Yep, Jefferson Memorial.
I don't even want to talk about F because it's the cover of the movie. So I can't give that. I kind of like I. It's this eagle with the American flag. I like the colors of Vince Flynn, and what does that say? I'm not even going to pronounce it. It's in some other language.
Yeah.
So that would be my my bronze.
A lot of people did like that one. I think it's maybe Czech, somewhere. It looks like southeastern Europe, with the eagle, which is pretty cool. Here, I'll put all of them up because, like I said, we've got a ton of pages of them. A little hard to see, but you know what? A little bit of a wild card. My favorite is N. Can we talk about N for a quick second?
Okay.
That bench, and by the way, I think that language is Thai, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if we've ever seen a cover with a quite obscure language. I believe those are Thai characters. But that bench, man, covered in blood, it just gets at the grittiness, the gore of what psychologically Rapp is going through and doing with that Sharif scene, his first kill. I think that cover is a nod to Rapp's first kill ever, which is a watershed moment. And I think it's ballsy to put a bench covered in blood with, I think, a hand. I think you see a dead hand laying across it, all bloodied up. I think that's a ballsy move. I think that's bold. So I think that's my gold.
All right.
I'm going with cover N for my gold. I'm a big fan of that one. I kind of like these international ones a little bit. Silver. The classic, probably just the straight A or E. I think both of those are just really nice. The originals. Can't go wrong with that. Bronze, third place.
Cover C.
Yeah, cover C, is definitely going to get it. No, I think it's just pretty badass, that H one. With the guy with
H1 is cool with the gun.
With the flag in the background.
You could see that being the scene where Mitch is like looking at the mirror, and because
right,
I like a cover where it doesn't spoil the book to me, but it's a cool scene where after I've read it and then I look at the cover, I can think about that scene again. That's
right.
what I really that's a good cover to me. So,
all right. I think that about does it for our covers. Great book. We both rated it rather highly.
Yeah.
Part 2. Done and dusted.
Done and dusted. We got 2 people still listening to us.
All right, look at that. They stayed around till the very end. What do you think that means in terms of where we go next? We got Killshot and then Last
Killshot
Man. So
may be my favorite cover.
only 2 more Vince books. And then we get to Kyle, is that right?
Yeah, that's it. We're getting there.
Wow, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've already done Lethal Agent and Total Power, so 7 if you include Enemy at the Gates. 7 books to go on the Mitch Rapp Podcast.
We are getting there. Well, that was great. Thank you to you guys who stuck around. I almost didn't make it there. When I went to go plug in my computer, I kind of zapped the shit out of myself.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it I don't know. I gotta fix. Maybe I have some sort of faulty thing. But yeah, I almost died mid pod.
Oh my god, are you serious? Did you you felt the shock?
Oh yeah, it went all up my body, and my arm was convulsing for a little bit. It wasn't good.
Is there a doctor in the house?
I just have an NP, but she's upstairs.
Oh my goodness! You might want to go talk to Caroline and ask her to look at you for a second.
I'm gonna call an electrician. That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, you might not want that piping and that exposed wall behind you to have bad electrical wires.
Right next to my sump pump. So live action. That's what happens when you do a live podcast. You never know what you're gonna get. At least I didn't drop my computer, and the computer is still going. So
if you left me solo here on this thing, I would have been like, "Crap's he dead?"
What if I just never came back?
You just never came back? That would have been terrible. I do have Caroline's number, so I would have been able to call. Oh my goodness.
All right, so what are we covering next week, Mike?
Next week, we hope to forward in the month of July to Killshot. Yes.
And again, we have to thank our patrons, including our special operator, Sherry F., our special agents, George, Matt, Don, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform. Find us online at MitchRappPod.com or using our Twitter handle at MitchRappPod. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch.